to them. We only make recommendations. The Board of Commissioners makes all the final determinations on the cases. Any cases that we move on to the Board of Commissioners today will come up potentially for their hearing on August 18th. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Peterson, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and take us into our rules for the meeting.
Okay, all those folks that are able to, please rise. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And good morning to the Planning Commission and to everyone watching at home. Today's hearing will allow virtual and on-site participation. I'd like to take a moment to explain the meeting format with the virtual and online and in-person format. As each case is presented, we will recognize those online and virtual in support and opposed to a specific case. For virtual attendees, to support or oppose a case, indicate your wish to speak concerning a case, and you will type this in your Q&A box on your computer. For instance, to support a zoning case, you would type SUP and then the case number. For instance, SUP Z123. Or if you wish to also support and speak on a case, you would punch into your Q&A box SUP Z123 speak. To oppose a zoning case, you would follow a very similar process. To oppose a case, you would type in your Q&A box OPP Z123 to oppose a case. Or if you wish to oppose it and also speak, you would type in OPP Z123 speak. The speakers will be called by name. Your line will be unmuted. You will say your name, where you live, and you also state that you affirm that you have been sworn in. Today's hearing will follow the following process and procedure. Each case will be called in numerical order. When each case is called, the applicant is asked to stand and signify that they are in attendance. Then we're going to call for anyone here opposed to a case who's here in person. If they're here in person, we would ask that they also stand and raise their hand so they can be counted for the record. After the counting of the opposition, the applicant and any opposition will be asked to come forward to be sworn in so they can present testimony to the board. The applicant would testify first, and then the opposition, if any, would testify second. It's important to note that each side gets 10 minutes to state their case or concerns. There's not a rebuttal process, and there's not a process to reserve your time, so convey all your information to the board within your 10-minute time period. Additionally, if there's more than one person who wishes to speak, you may want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes, and you don't want to cover the same information twice. Then after the presentation period, the Planning Commission will start to discuss the matter at hand. From the discussion, you may ask one or more speakers to come back to the mic for additional comments or questions. And after that, the Planning Commission will either make a motion to approve, deny, hold, or continue the case at hand. There is one case on today's printed agenda in which the applicant has asked the case to be withdrawn. That's Land Use Permit Case number 14 of 2020, Family Life Restoration Center Incorporated. Mr. Chairman of the Board, the applicant is asking that this case be withdrawn without prejudice.
Okay, thank you, John. And that case is one that I was handling. We had a lengthy community meeting last Wednesday that ran over 2.5 hours. And after that meeting, the applicant did decide to request that the case be withdrawn. So I'll make a motion that we withdraw LUP 14 without prejudice.
Second.
All those in favor? And I can't see you, Fred. So tell me what your vote is, Fred. Can you hear me, Fred? Raise your hand if you're voting for it, Fred. Okay, now I can see you. Okay, so that passes 5-0.
Okay. There are also a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have been held or continued and will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z13 of 2020, Arturo Martinez. This case was continued by the staff until the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z13 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z37 of 2020, Site Centers Corp. This case was continued by the staff until the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z37 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z39 of 2020, KO Management Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z39 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z42 of 2020, Cumberland Mall LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z42 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z45 of 2020, Springhouse Kennesaw. This case was continued by the staff until the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z45 of 2020 will not be heard today. Land use permit number 15 of 2020, Kristen Myers. This case was continued by the staff until the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So LUP 15 of 2020 will not be heard today. SLUP 4 of 2020, White Oak Longline Holdings LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLUP 4 of 2020 will not be heard today. Mr. Chairman and Board, there is one other case on today's agenda, in which we did get a letter on Friday to continue this case. And the applicant is present, but the staff would ask the board to continue rezoning case Z44 of 2020, Peach State Salvage Incorporated, until your September 1st hearing date.
Okay, and I believe that's Judy's case. I can't hear you for some reason, Judy. You're muted still.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. I make a motion to continue that to the September meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have second. So all in favor, please raise your hands and say aye. Because I can't.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed?
Aye.
Who said aye to oppose? Or was that a late? Was there anybody opposed? Okay, I'm going to say it carried 5-0 to continue it.
Okay, thank you. And there's one other case on today's agenda in which the applicant is asking for the case to be continued until your September 1st, 2020 hearing date. And that's rezoning case Z40 of 2020, Brooks Chadwick Capital LLC. The applicant does want to continue to work on the plan, Mr. Chairman and Board. So the staff would ask the board to continue rezoning case Z40 of 2020 until your September 1st hearing date.
Okay, and I believe that's Judy and Tony's case.
I'll say so moved to continue until September.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? If not, let's call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I saw everybody but Fred. What's your vote, Fred? You there, Fred? Okay, I see how he's going to say
yes. I voted yes.
Okay, so we continue that case 5-0.
Okay.
Z40.
Thank you. And I would like to ask the people here who are today in person that if you have a cell phone, please turn your cell phone on mute, because the ringing does interfere with the broadcast presentations, so please mute your cell phone. Any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement. If within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of a rezoning application, a campaign contribution totaling $250 or more was made to a current member of the Board of Commissioners. Additional information about this requirement is located in the hearing room on the table in the back of the room. And I want to remind applicants, opposition, or any interested party that information is due to this board the Wednesday prior to this hearing. Any information submitted after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by the board at their discretion. And at this point, Mr. Chairman of the Board, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Thank you. Cobb County Planning Commission zoning hearing consent agenda for August 4th, 2020. Rezoning case Z41, Brandon Investments LLC requests a rezoning from R20 to LI for warehouse and offices in land lot 683 of the 18th District. The property is located on the north side of White Road, southeast of Factory Shawls Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan dated July 21st, 2020. Number 2, letter of stipulations from Mr. Kevin Moore dated July 29th, 2020. Stormwater management comments and recommendations. Number 4, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And number 5, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant is present, and there is no one here in person or online to speak on this case. Next case is rezoning case Z43 of 2020, Stunts Group LLC. The applicant is requesting a rezoning from R20 to OS for the purpose of professional corporate offices in land lot 939 of the 16th District. The property is located on the east side of Kennesaw Avenue, south of Kirk Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan received by the Zoning Division on June 4, 2020, with the District Commissioner approving minor modifications. Number 2, letter from Mr. Adam Rosen dated July 29, 2020. Number 3, Fire Department comments and recommendations. Number 4, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. Number 5, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. Number 6, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant is present, and at 9 o'clock, there is no one here in person or virtual to oppose this case. Moving into land use permits on the consent agenda, LUP 12 of 2020, Jeffrey C. Smith, request a temporary land use permit renewal for the purpose of produce sales in land lot 1054 of the 19th District. The property is located on the northeast side of Austell Powder Springs Road, south of McKay Road. Staff recommends approval for 24 months, subject to the following conditions. Produce stand to be maintained at the side of the primary structure. Off-street parking and turnaround space to be provided to the side and rear of the existing structure. Number 3, business activity limited to spring and summer months. And number 4, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant is present, and there is no one here at 9 o'clock in person or virtual to oppose this case. And now that would complete the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman of the Board.
Okay. Thank you, John. Is there any additions by any of the planning commissioners? I do have a couple for Z41, but on Z41, with regard to the site plan, just put that the following changes are, I guess, site plan received with the following changes. Changes necessary for DOT recommendations. Changes necessary to meet county ordinance for stream buffers. No variances to be granted. And just a note on, and also district commissioner to approve the final site plan. And then I want a clerk's note on that we recommend the BOC consider adding the eastern parcel to the Six Flags Special Tax District. It wasn't included because it was residential, I guess. And now that it's going to be commercial, it should be in there. And just as way of explanation with regard to the stream buffers, they have some engineering reports that show that there may not actually be streams there, and they may not need stream buffers, but in case, it's determined they need to adjust the plan to move things out of the buffers. Is there any other additions to Z43?
No.
Okay, with that, do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented and amended.
Thank you. Okay, we have a second from Alice. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. Call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Let me look and see. And Fred's raising his hand, so that carries 5-0.
Thank you. And all those folks that are on consent agenda, you're free to leave for today. Just come back in 2 weeks for the Board of Commissioners hearing. Moving into the held and continued case agenda to be heard. First case is rezoning case Z62 of 2019, Emory Development Company LLC. The applicant asked for rezoning from R20 and NRC to PVC for the purpose of mixed use in land lots 77, 78, 155, and 156 of the 18th District. The property is located on the west side of Mapleton Parkway, the southwest side of Old Powder Springs Road, The north side of Boggs Road, the north side of Patricia Lane, on the north side of Lynn Circle, on the east and west sides of Milam Drive, on the south side of Sunset Boulevard, which is not open, and on the east and west sides of Glore Circle. The applicant is present, Mr. Chairman of the Board, and there are 2 people who signed up virtually, and one of those people wishes to speak. So at this point, I will turn this over to the applicant for his presentation.
And go ahead when you're ready, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Planning Commissioners, I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant, Embry Development, in this application for rezoning. And just to remind you, there is a lag in time. We have to clean the presentation area between, so just we'll remember that since y'all are here in person, but only virtually. We have a presentation that's going to be put up here in a moment, momentarily, so that we can walk through the site plan and this proposed rezoning. This property is almost 31 acres, located, as Mr. Peterson stated, primarily fronting on Mapleton Parkway. Also located at the intersection with Old Powder Springs, and then also having property and portions of it located on Milam Drive, which is a local road. We're waiting for that presentation to come up so I can point the things for you. This project, an application, as you probably noted, has been continued multiple times, and I want to explain that, because sometimes that can lead to questions about what may be wrong. In this instance, it's about what was right. This particular applicant, now we have the site plan, fantastic. Now you can see with Mapleton Parkway along the right-hand side and Old Powder Springs Road, you see that intersection. That intersection is important for the story I'm telling you about. That is, at that corner as an existing commercial parcel zoned NRC that has had multiple issues from the surrounding community in terms of its code compliance. It's a used tire type of establishment that has long been a community concern. We were able, at the behest of the community, to negotiate with that owner and actually put that property under contract. It just took some time to do that, but we consider that to be a real win-win for the community in terms of putting together this overall project for a true PVC, or Planned Village Planned Village Community or PVC zoning. So to walk you through that site plan, so that you can see overall what we're proposing here on Mapleton Parkway. You have 3 different product mixes that you can see here that are residential. You have townhomes that are primarily along the Mapleton Parkway frontage. There's a total of 81 townhomes that are proposed. Those are rear-loaded townhomes primarily, and they're oriented and designed as such to provide for front facing to Mapleton Parkway, so that you have a very nice aesthetic along Mapleton Parkway, as well as all of your entry points will be front facing on the streets that are coming in off of Mapleton Parkway and throughout. And that really lends itself to a very attractive community, both from Mapleton Parkway and when you drive through it. Turning next, you'll see the next residential home product that we've noted as Courtyard Cottages. Those are actually detached homes with that are a number of 46, and those are detached homes with basically a type of zero lot line, though there is separation between the homes. And those total 46 homes there. Also moving then to Milam, which Milam's kind of through the middle of your screen and through the middle of the site plan is the local road that runs between Old Powder Springs and Boggs. There's additional property that's part of this overall tract you'll see on your left-hand side to continue this transition of residential density. We are proposing a total of 21 single-family detached homes on that section as well. And what you get with this is a mixture of residential product that provides for not only a mixture of price point, but provides for different types of home product and home choices and home options for this proposed plan. In addition, at the top, at the existing NRC corner, that will be a commercial parcel that will be primarily for a retail restaurant type of commercial that we'll show you later in this presentation. We think that will really be something welcomed by the community, number one, but more importantly, two, by the new residents here. Will be a real focal point for this entire development. This proposed site plan and community also has full amenities, and that's noted by staff as well. As you can see on the site plan, has pool, clubhouse, dog parks. It has walking trails throughout the open space that's provided. And actually, there's right at 5 acres of open space that's provided in this plan that is usable open space for purposes of walking trails and passive park area throughout the community and accessible to all, as well as the full amenities that we're proposing. A couple of other things that are worth noteworthy. Along Mableton Parkway, there is a DOT SPLOST project for a multi-use trail. We have accommodated that trail. We have also proposed that we will construct it, or with DOT's recommendation, do a fee in lieu if they're in construction of it. But either way, we're responsible for that, and I think that's a very laudable thing for this particular applicant and redevelopment to do. That will also include pedestrian lighting that will be in place here, that will be in accordance with the Mableton Parkway design guidelines. What you're seeing with all of this is really truly an attempt to create a location here that will be a destination for the residents that live here and will really prove to be, and we think to be, a real catalyst for development in this area, given the vision that's being provided here. In addition, I do want to point out on the single family detached section, we have included additional open space that serves really as a buffer to the existing Richards home that's located there on Milan Drive, and I do want to point that out. We are also, I think it'd be important to go through kind of the vision that you'll see here through the elevations and renderings we provided for each of the types of home product, as well as the commercial category as well. And if we could go ahead and start going through those slides. If I have to do that, here we go. Cornelius does a great job. First, as we go through these are renderings of the townhome product. And what you're going to see throughout this is a real consistent, very consistent view of how these will look and feel, and that we are proposing for townhomes. It really is to have a consistent style of architecture that will really stand out and be unique, and we think be extremely attractive and welcome. Now we're moving into the Courtyard Homes, and again, you're carrying through this architectural theme that will be throughout as he flips through the style of the Courtyard Homes that we will be proposing and have proposed through our stipulation letter. And as it flips through, a couple of more. And now we're reaching some of the single family home renderings as well. And what you're seeing, though, I think is a real quality of architecture, a consistency, and what I think what we're trying to bring is a real theme to the overall subdivision from the residential standpoint, as well as the overall community. Moving now to the commercial. Okay. Moving now to the commercial, you'll see we have some vision state renderings for the commercial portion. That commercial portion totals 13,500 square feet of commercial space that will be for retail and restaurant. And what the real vision here is to have a gathering space of local restaurants that can prove to be extremely successful for residents as well as the community, where there's outdoor area as well as areas to enjoy the fellowship of each other and dine, as well as have some retail offerings. I think it's really important to note we have worked very closely with Middleton Improvement Coalition. Our stipulation letter includes an extensive list of prohibited types of commercial uses that we have gone through to ensure that the commercial aspect of this proposed community is consistent with the vision that we're describing here. We think it's outstanding from that standpoint. And to that note, the Mableton Improvement Coalition did submit a letter dated July 30th. As I said, we were in really a lot of talks and discussions with them and have been over a long period of time. We wanted to make sure that their letter is included because it contains 6 additional comments to our stipulations, and we want to make sure that this Planning Commission knows that this July 30th letter is agreeable to the applicant as to each and every one of those additional comments. And if there was any motion for approval, we would respectfully request those comments be included as part of additional stipulations. We have also submitted stipulation letters dated July 29th and July 30th that are extensive as well, laying out, as you might expect, this type of project. Again, we believe this community will have price points ranging from the high 200s, low 300s to 400,000 based on the product type. Those price points overlap, as you might expect, and gives folks that want to live in this area that see this as a real opportunity for living in a place that's been created for them, multiple opportunities for price point and quality homes, as well as completing the vision for a true planned village community that has a commercial component that's complementary to not only this proposed community, but the community at large, and it likewise includes multiple opportunities for open space enjoyment and full amenity, active amenity enjoyment as well. Lastly, we have reviewed the updated staff comments and recommendations, which do include comments from DOT as it relates to a couple of points of entry and access, one on Old Powder Springs Road, as well as the one on Mableton, as well as the most northern point of access on Mableton Parkway. We have reviewed those and those recommendations from DOT to accommodate their comments as it deals with either right in, right out. We're sliding those entrances can be accommodated with this site plan quite easily. It's just a matter of moving some Lego pieces around, quite frankly. I don't want to diminish what the engineer does, but that was how he put it as far as accommodating those comments, which we can do and are happy to do. With that, we are in complete agreement with all of staff's comments and recommendations. Staff has recommended approval. This property is within a community activity center as well as low density residential. We believe the overall project density at 4.79 units per acre is entirely consistent with the goals and spirit and intent of a planned village community, and that, again, this community, if approved, can provide for an outstanding catalyst for this area along Mableton Parkway. And we therefore respectfully request your recommendation for approval with all of the stipulations that we have referenced be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Now we'll hear from the opposition.
We have one person who wants to speak in opposition, and that is Robin Meyer. That's Robin Meyer.
Yes, good morning. My name is Robin Meyer, and I'm the chairman of the zoning committee for the Middleton Improvement Coalition. And I reserve this time to speak in opposition, mostly as a form of insurance, in order to make the points contained in our letter of July 30th. However, with Mr. Moore's comments accepting all of those 6 points, I won't take our time this morning and repeat them. However, I will say that we have very much enjoyed working with Mr. Moore throughout this process. We are very happy to see that commercial corner redeveloped, and we are very excited to see the distinctive architecture and the high quality of new development that we hope will be coming soon to our community. So with that, I'll close and ask you to please consider recommending this application for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robin. And I believe we have no other people in opposition, so we will close the public portion of the hearing, and it's back to this board, and this is a case that I'm handling. So I'll kind of walk us through. There are a few issues left to be resolved, but I want to say in general, I think this is a pretty good concept, and I think it's something that the community's excited about having come. So, and I appreciate the work that's been done, and I understand the reason for the delays in adding in that additional land at the corner of Mapleton Parkway and Old Powder Springs so that it can be a completely cohesive development. Now, one of the issues, and this was something that the applicant was working on, was a connection to allow people to go kind of west from the site without having to go onto Mapleton Parkway. Because right now, three entrances are on Mapleton Parkway, and one is on Old Powder Springs, but it's a right-in, right-out only, which would then only take you to Mapleton Parkway. And with that being, a state highway that's, people are typically driving 50 to 60 miles an hour on, it's not ideal to be going there. Let's say somebody wants to go from their pool over in the amenity and get back to their house off of Milam in the single family detached section. They would have to go out onto this 4-lane highway to do it, which is far from ideal. And the applicant was working to make connectivity to Milam, but then received some comments from DOT that were pretty wide open as to what would be required of them in order to make that connection. And rightfully so. I think they were a little leery of taking on essentially upgrading potentially the whole road in order to make a connection there. And that seemed, not to be, a reasonable ask. So that's one of the issues, but I think we still need connection. And if we could take the GIS a little bit south, we'll see that this parcel does have frontage on Boggs Road, which we could make a connection to. And actually, that would be a very good connection for two reasons. One is people, if they came to Boggs and made a right, they could go up to Pisgah and get over to Pebblebrook High School. But also, if they came to Boggs and made a left, and then a immediate right onto, I think that's Beverly, that would take them to the back entrance of the new Clay Harmony Leland Elementary School. So we would provide good connectivity to, two important schools that are close by without making people get out on Mapleton Parkway to get there. Provide good connectivity for kids potentially walking to the elementary school, and that. So that would be, some of the issues there. Then also you'll see there's a Patricia Lane that comes off of Milam that's a dead end road. And it's at the other end. You scroll back south again. It's right there, comes off of the Clay Elementary there. That is, fully paved, curb gutter, and it's just a dead end there. But if we make the connection to Boggs Road, it's only maybe 200 feet of paving to make that connection that then would go up to the single family detached area to provide a good connection to those people into their subdivision. So those two to me seem reasonable to ask, and I will say that the applicants, Kevin has said they don't have a problem making a connection. So that's something that I think we need to work on. And then there were some other DOT issues. Kevin referred to that northernmost entrance, and DOT said either move it 250 feet away from the intersection or make it right in, right out only. And I'll have to say, with the way Old Powder Springs is an offset intersection and the stop bar is so far back. And knowing that the way the county allows right in, right out to be designed, that people are constantly making left turns around the little pork chop that they put there, I think it's a recipe for disaster to allow right in, right out only in that location with the speeds on the road. So I'm going to ask that they move it at least 250 feet from the intersection so that we get that done. But that does create one issue. If they say close that and just leave the two, there's, to get to the commercial, the primary way to turn it off Mapleton Parkway would go down what's described as kind of an alley of driveways for the townhomes. And that's not really a good idea. So they are going to have to move the Lego blocks, like Kevin said. We need to see what that's going to look like to have that. Also notice next to the amenity area, there's a very long line of parallel parking, which is good, except for it goes all the way around a curve, and there's nothing at kind of the apex of the curve to prevent people from driving into the parallel parking lines. In other words, we need a little island there, take out a parking spot and get a little island so that it keeps people separated on that curve. We need to show on the site plan the entrance on Old Powder Springs to be right in, right out only. We also need to show the deceleration lanes on Mapleton Parkway that are required. So that's kind of what I call the road DOT issues. And then we get into the commercial building. And the concept of the building is great. I think the community really embraces the concept. But one of the issues is that the material shown on the exterior of the building is corrugated metal. And we have design guidelines on Mapleton Parkway, which don't allow for that. And in fact, we've had two cases very recently, one case pending in which we had a hearing and told the applicant, go back and work on your design because you're bringing us an all metal building and we have design guidelines. And then we also had a case that we moved on last year that is literally across the street on Old Powder Springs from this parcel, and three commercial buildings up. That zoning case kind of wrapped around a couple other parcels, and part of that was having them remove the metal siding and put in, things that met the design guidelines. Now, both that property and the Z13 that's currently being continued are both nonprofits. And if we're going to make nonprofits live up to the standards of the design guidelines, we certainly ought to make a commercial venture like this live up to the standards. We also have a facade improvement program going on in that corridor where businesses are encouraged to upgrade their facade to design standards with some low interest loans and that, through community development. And I just don't see allowing this to go forward with corrugated. Now there are some design elements that maybe the design guidelines didn't quite take into consideration, and there may be reasonable variances to the design guidelines, say because this is kind of an open air concept, the roof might not exactly fit the design guidelines. Also, because it's an open air, they have some metal gating to get in. But I certainly think where we saw the painted colors on the commercial rendering, that they could be brick, because the design guidelines call for the building to be predominantly brick with accents. And that would be anything that you would see from Mableton Parkway or Old Powder Springs. I don't have a problem with kind of what the courtyard area of the design is being the metal, because that's almost like interior. So that was, you know, the issues with the commercial building. Likewise, because this is a mixed use zoning and not a single family zoning, the design guidelines, I believe, also apply to the townhomes that are going to face Mableton Parkway. And I think they could do a white brick on them, but once again, it calls for predominantly brick, so I think they need to do some work on those as well. And I would like to see a little bit more work on some of the other renderings to incorporate a little bit more brick into them. But those are kind of the issues I have with the plan. Does anybody else want to make comments on it before I make a motion? Not seeing any, so I'll go ahead and make a motion that we hold Z62 till our September hearing and ask the applicant to make changes to address the concerns I just brought up. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second from Alice. Any further discussion? Okay, call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand. And Alice, oh, there she is. She's up on my big screen. Okay. I think that was, and you were a yes, right, Judy? I can't hear you, so just raise your hand if you were good. Okay, so that passes 5-0 to hold it until September. Thank you. What's next, John?
Mr. Chairman of the Board, the next two cases are a zoning case and a special use permit that are connected. So if it's okay with the board, we're going to hear these together.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to read them together and then introduce the applicant and the opposition. Zoning case Z76 of 2019, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School Incorporated. Request a rezoning from O&I and R20 to O&I and R20 for the purpose of a private school. Expansion of grades 5 through 8 and land lots 695 of the 17th district. Property is located at the intersection of the northwest side of Cooper Lake Road and on the north side of Daniel Street, northeasterly side of Daniel Street. And also with special land use permit number 17 of 2019, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School Incorporated. Request a special land use permit for the purpose of a private school, expansion of grades 5 through 8 and land lot 695 of the 17th district. Property is located on the intersection of the northwest side of Cooper Lake Road and on the north side of Daniel Street, northeasterly side of Daniel Street. The applicant is present. There are two people here opposed, with one person wishing to speak on each of the cases. So Z76 and Sub 17 both have two opposed, with one person wishing to speak on each of the cases. At this time, I'll hand this over to the applicant for his presentation.
Okay, and just
Mr. Chairman?
I was just going to go to you, Tony. So
Okay, I will be recusing myself on this one. Thank you.
okay, you're welcome. Okay, whenever they're ready for you, Kevin. I know they have to clean up first, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're also going to upload this information as well for us.
That looks like he's getting it.
Yes. He's good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant, which is St. Benedict's Episcopal School. This property, which is just over 4 acres, 4.22 acres, located along Cooper Lake and Daniel Street. You see the site plan in front of you. Just to orient both you and anybody else that is viewing, on the right-hand side is Cooper Lake Road, and then along the bottom where you see where it says Landscape Firm, that is where you have Daniel Street, and then Daniel Street as it continues up the left-hand side of the site plan. We are proposing 3 access points, 2 on Cooper Lake, 1 on Daniel Street in the location shown. what St. Benedict's Episcopal School is proposing is actually a new school site. They have been at this, not at this property, but virtually across the street from this property since 2009, operating as now a very successful Episcopal school and have been a wonderful part of this community. They have made sure that it is a community school that supports community efforts and has been a wonderful addition and stabilizing force in this community for the work that they have done, as well as for educating the children that have come through this school. What is proposed here is to relocate their existing 5th through 8th grade, so essentially their middle school. They're proposing to relocate that middle school from where it is on campus, on the existing campus, that would be to then build this new facility and relocate that 5th through 8th grades. That's a total of 250 students that would be accommodated here, though they don't now have that many currently, but that's what this would accommodate as a relocated middle school for them. I think it's also important to note that we always talk about traffic impact. So here you have a pretty unique instance and why we believe this is a very positive application and proposal is because you already have this existing traffic, that is the existing school traffic, comes to these through these exact roads and comes to this almost exact location on a daily basis during normal school times. Of course, we have Corona, but that's not what we're going to base our presentation on. But more normal school times, that existing school traffic comes to this location anyway. So all we're doing is moving it to this site. We think that, again, is a positive part of this application because any other use is going to bring new traffic, not existing that already here. I think that's a very positive thing. You can also see with this proposed site plan, it is contains both the middle school, music, gymnasium, library, and full middle school for St. Benedict's, as well as plaza areas and lawns. We also think it's important that this property currently is zoned office and institutional. It has stipulations that would prohibit currently this type of use. There's also an R20 component to it along the top, which we propose to remain R20 as is. So the actual zoning of this property is from O&I and R20 to O&I with stipulations in R20. So that, again, this particular type of use, really from a zoning standpoint, has no impact as well from those categories. Turning now to some additional slides which we can provide, because always when you have a school, we want to see how is that carpool going to work. And in this instance, what we have is we've had multiple versions of carpool programs and carpool sketches and carpool plans. We had community meetings, and I think it's very important to understand that almost unanimously the community was not in favor of having an access further up on Daniel Street for purposes of carpool or any other type of access further down on Daniel Street. As you go past where this property, as you see where this access is that we have on Daniel, once you kind of make that turn and head further back, it becomes very much a solid residential area. And the community's input on that access any further down Daniel was that they were opposed to that due to its interruption and impact, but supported largely the access plan that we have here, whereby carpool would both enter and exit on Cooper Lake in the fashion that we've shown here. It provides for more than sufficient car stacking for the afternoon as well as in the morning. Again, the good thing we have here is it is St. Benedict, so they do this regularly now for their middle school, and they know exactly how their carpools work, the timing of it, how many they need to stack at any point at any given time. They know how it works because they're doing it now. So what we're proposing here works for us. We believe it can be done very safely and also have the least amount of traffic impact on that very difficult intersection of Cooper Lake and Daniel Street that then quickly leads to Atlanta Road. We believe this arrangement and coordination is the best, taking into account the community input where they were concerned, taking into account what's needed from the school standpoint in terms of how it operates and how they can do so and conduct it safely. And we think this provides for the best of all worlds. We do note this was not a proposal that Cobb DOT recommended. However, we just disagree. Differences of opinion sometimes exist. Our traffic studies and reports and engineers were comfortable with this, as was the community and as was the school. And so that's why we are proposing this arrangement. Also moving forward with the renderings that have been done, and we've been circulating these and socialized these over the period of time with the community. As you flip through these, you can see, again, the degree of quality that we'll bring to the site. We think as the middle school, private middle school for St. Benedict's, it is welcomed in terms of its community impact. The community is used to the school, has a great deal of support for the school. And at this particular location, there have been a variety of other proposals that have been met with stiff opposition. We believe this proposal, though, has not had that level of opposition. And there's a reason for it. It's because of the community's general support for the school and the fact that the continuation of the school's efforts to relocate the middle school at this location would be something that would be favorably and welcomed by the community. I'm here to answer any questions. Reverend Brian Sullivan is also here from St. Benedict's, can answer any questions that they ask. We respectfully request your recommendation of approval based on the site plan and carpool arrangement that we have filed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And now we'll hear from the opposition.
You ready to go?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Mary Rose Barnes. I'm with Oakdale Community Association. This application needs to be denied and finally put to rest. Since the application of last year, we have had very little information from the applicant other than a carpool plan that does not meet Cobb standards. There has been no stipulation letter, nor any request for community meetings. During the seemingly countless continuations, we've had to rely on Mr. Peterson to find out if they would be continued each month. We just recently informed that it would finally come up this month. According to DOT staff, there's been no subsequent information from the applicant since March. The plan calls for a carpool lane with only access and egress and access from Cooper Lake Road, the dead-end section of Cooper Lake Road, serving several residents and a daycare center. Residents of this section of Cooper Lake Road would be virtually prisoners in their own homes early in the morning and prevented timely access in their homes during the afternoon times, carpool times. The daycare center would be put out of business, as timely access through St. Benedict's carpool lines for approximately 200 students at a critical drop-off time and pickup times. It would seem to be suspect for St. Benedict's, which also has preschool students, to propose a project that would effectively eliminate competition. An overflow of over 100 drivers waiting on Atlanta Road, Cooper Lake Road, and Daniel would create a daily traffic hazard at this location and effectively eliminate the use of our only public park. We understand St. Benedict's need to expand. We knew from the very beginning if they should succeed, they would have to have additional property. However, approval of this overreaching proposal would result in a major disaster for Oakdale. Oakdale Community Association Board respectfully request that you recommend denial of C-76 and SLUP 17 of 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Do we have another speaker?
That's all go.
Okay. By chance, is Andy Smith on the phone? or online? Because he signed up for another case, but I think he also wanted to speak on this one.
Yes.
I know he, and
Yes.
I know you there, Andy? Okay, did you want to speak?
I do want to speak for a moment if possible.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that I agree that St. Benedict's has been a beneficial partner with this community. What I hope to do is help make sure this is how it stays. I believe that the circulation plan will be detrimental to the businesses and neighbors in close proximity and all who use Daniel Street to access Atlanta Road. I believe this requires further study. There has not been enough involvement with the community since I was on the planning commission back in March. And I respectfully ask that this case be held. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. And I don't think there's any other speakers, so it's back to this board. Close up the public portion of the hearing, and Alice is handling this case, so I'll turn it over to her.
I have attended the Zoom meeting that was held recently, and this particular zoning was brought up, and I don't believe there's been enough neighborhood input into the transportation issues that have been brought up. And although the neighborhood was largely in favor of this school, and I had hoped this zoning would work out, but the applicant can't meet the DOT recommendations. So I have to make a motion to deny Z76 and SLUP 17.
Hey, do we have a second? I think Judy's trying to second, but she's muted. You're muted, Judy.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. And now you're muted again.
I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
And now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, it automatically goes off and on. Hurry, call the vote.
Okay, so you second, right?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Looks like Fred has some. Before we call the vote, go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I've been a little bit on the outside of this. Alice has been more involved, I know, but my only question would be, based on the comment we heard from our former member of the Planning Commission, Andy Smith, is this something where further discussion would be useful, or is this something where we're at the end of the discussion and we need to just move forward?
We're sort of, this is Judy, Fred. We sort of need to move forward. It's my understanding they can't meet the DOT requirements. And Alice, was that your understanding also?
Yes, that is.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I personally think the Carpool plan looks like a figure eight, like you do at a racetrack. I know they say there'll be a crossing guard, but I just don't see how that layout really works either. And I think it's, we've been holding this case since last year, and here we are August. So if they were going to come up with a solution, and it's been the same issue since then, really.
Exactly.
We were going to get a solution. I think we would have had it by now. So I'm going to go ahead and support the motion. But is there any further discussion? Not seeing any. I will go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor? Okay, it looks like we have a vote of 4 with Tony abstained. Or recused, I should say. And I don't know if Tony was listening or not, or we need to let him know to come back on. Okay, and actually we need a separate motion for the slump. I forgot we had a slump as well. So that first motion was for Z76.
All right. Regarding SLUP 17, my motion is also to deny.
Second.
Okay, and call the vote. Okay, all All in favor of the motion, 4-0, with Tony recused. Okay, let's move on to the next case.
And Mr. Chairman and Board, since we only have 3 more cases, does the board want to hear the other St. Benedict since the opposition's already in the room?
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Goodbye, Tony. Tony is going to recuse himself from this one as well.
So, and just like we did the last one, we're going to do the zoning and the SLUP hearing at the same time and just take separate votes at the end.
Okay.
Okay, rezoning case Z38 of 2020, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School, request a rezoning from GC to O&I for school in land lot 694 in the 17th district. The property is located on the west side of Atlanta Road, north of Cumberland Parkway, and on the east side of Cooper Lake Road. Additionally, SLEP 6 of 2020, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School, request a special use permit for a school in land lot 694 in the 17th district. It's located on the west side of Atlanta Road, north of Cumberland Parkway, and on the east side of Cooper Lake Road. The applicant is present, and there are 2 people here in person to oppose it. And I don't believe there's anyone here virtually to oppose it. So at this time, I would ask the applicant to come forward to present their case.
Go ahead whenever you're ready, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Again, Kevin Moore here on behalf of St. Benedict's Episcopal School in this application regarding 0.76 acres, a parcel located off of Cooper Lake Road. I'm going to hopefully pull this one up here in a minute. But it is totally coincidence that these 2 cases for St. Benedict's are being both heard today. This one, though, has arisen out of completely different circumstances. In order to open the school and do so safely under the guidelines of CDC and all the other agencies, governmental health agencies involved due to COVID-19, this situation is one that arose for St. Benedict's so that they can move their 4th grade to this location. It's available for their use to move their 4th grade to this location. What that enables them to do is then have appropriate spacing for their students, both the 4th grade at this location as well as their other students at their current location, and allows them that room to do so. It's critical for them to be able to open, to have that spacing, and to be able to meet all of the guidelines that are necessary for them to do so. As a private school, they have an opportunity to do that, do so safely, to do so completely within the guidelines as they work with their community of students and parents. And that's what has resulted in this application for this property. It's actually a good thing for this property. It's currently zoned general commercial. And what we are proposing is rezoning to office institutional for this school, for the Episcopal school to have its 4th grade. We have referenced that it is a total of 52 students, though we have set a maximum number at 60 just because that gives us a bit of wiggle room over current enrollment, especially given that there has been a number of parents that have decided to move their students to private schools across the area, not just St. Benedict's, but others, due to the fact that our public schools are starting virtually. So we just want to make sure we can accommodate that and have a few extra, and that's why we have proposed a total number of 60. This location, again, is ideal. It's virtually adjacent to the existing St. Benedict School on Cooper Lake Road. We have also, as you see on this plan, the building sets up very easily with the 2 access points for carpool stacking both in the morning and in the afternoon. I just want to point out as well, you'll see the big red X or mark out on the right-hand side on Atlanta Road. That's an existing access point that we have noted, as well as Cobb DOT has noted. that does not need to be open, and it needs to be closed. We are proposing to close that temporarily. I think that's important to note because, again, St. Benedict's is utilizing this location temporarily for now due to the public health emergency and their desire to open. This is not, at this point in time, permanent for St. Benedict's. They do not have a permanent arrangement with the owner of this property. This is being used temporarily for this school year in order to move forward with opening the school under the COVID restrictions and guidelines. And as such, we are proposing to temporarily barricade the entrance on Atlanta Road in the event that the school moves forward and does in fact purchase this property, which I hopes it can at some point, and or redevelop this property at a future time. Then that would make we would have that temporary barricade become permanent according to DOT standards, which would include curb and gutter and so forth along Atlanta Road and make it a permanent barricade for that entrance. But going forward with the actual carpool plan, I just want to show how this can develop and why this site works so well for this use. You've seen the morning carpool. Now you have a 30-car stack that can take place in the afternoon carpool. And then going to the next slide, you can see as well that it could even be increased to a 46-car stack. And again, keep in mind this is for no more than 60 students. Right now it's at 52. So that is more than sufficient car stacking that can occur from a carpool plan. You have a one-way entrance and exit each onto Cooper Lake Road that'll work very seamlessly for this location. And again, this is a proposal that doesn't bring new traffic whatsoever into the area. This is traffic that's existing next door at St. Benedict's currently. We are proposing this simply to be able to accommodate the public health emergency and open the school in a safe manner for these students. I just cannot reiterate that enough as far as this proposal goes. We think that this actually will lead, hopefully, could lead to a more permanent situation. But those plans have not been formalized, those plans have not been finalized, and are not available. We know that interest of being transparent. I know that we have spoken to members of the community about that, and we are aware of that. It's just that now we do not have that ability because we do not own the property. We do not have a long-term lease, and we are restricted in that manner. As we said, this is temporary for us for this school year, so that St. Benedict's can open safely. Again, I'm here to answer any of your questions, as well as Brian Sullivan from St. Benedict's is likewise here, and we can answer any questions that you might have. And we respectfully request your recommendation of approval subject to these plans. I do want to state that the stipulation letter that was sent out had a mistake. I referenced the access on Atlanta, on the access point that I pointed out that will be temporarily closed and barricaded as being on Cumberland Parkway, and very obviously it's on Atlanta Road. So please accept my apologies for that mistake. With that, we appreciate your time and consideration here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Now we'll hear from the opposition.
Morning again. Mary Rose Barnes with Oakdale Community Association. The carpool plan we just saw, we've just seen it. It did not come with Friday afternoon's stipulation letter. We were dealing with another one, and part of the time there was some confusion there with that, so we do not have that information to deal with. Neither do we have the rendering that was submitted with the June 25th stipulation letter. It was referenced in the letter but not included. We understand St. Benedict's ongoing need for additional classroom space. We have known from the beginning that if the school prospered, it would need more property. However, the office and institutional proposal zoning is an overreaching category for this 6.76 acre tract. It is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and inappropriate for this neighborhood of newer upscale homes. The adjacent St. Benedict's main campus is indeed zoned O&I, but with conditions specific to use as a church and a school. This tract is a standalone property. The O&I category would open the door for very intense and inappropriate uses for this property. Heavy uses that would devalue properties and affect the quality of life in our communities. Low-rise office is their category that best fits this property. St. Benedict's Middle School across Cooper Lake Road, as you will see, is zoned LRO. It was also originally proposed as an O&I, but at the request of OCA Board, St. Benedict's agreed to an LRO zoning. The same factors for the protection of the LRO code, of the protection of the area with LRO code for the middle school apply to this application. An LRO zoning would allow St. Benedict's is requested use of the property, provide a viable zoning category for the present owner, safeguard the nature of the community, and rid Oakdale area of another general commercial zoning. Further, and most importantly, stipulation number 7 of the July 31st letter, excuse me, would delete DOT's safety recommendations or alterations to the entrance and exit points on Cooper Lake Road. Cooper Lake Road is heavily traveled, and also the location of access and ingress for the carpool lane for St. Benedict's main campus. Standard safety precautions are absolutely necessary for the safety of all who traverse the stretch of Cooper Lake Road. St. Benedict's rationale for non-compliance with DOT standards is that since the school is to be temporary for the duration of the coronavirus epidemic, these safety improvements are not necessary. We strongly disagree with this contention. A school should provide the highest safety standards beginning with the first day of school. Have the parents been told that they and their children would be denied the full protection of DOT standards? And approval with this exception included would also relieve future occupants the responsibility of having a safe traffic pattern. In other words, the exemption would create an unsafe permanent condition designed for a temporary circumstance surrounding the earlier components. Stipulation number 17 actually belies St. Benedict's characterization of the use as a temporary rental unit during the present health crisis, as it referenced the possibility of St. Benedict's purchasing the property. Even in the event of a sale, the stipulation letter still does not include any reference to DOT improvements to the Cooper Lake Road and access and ingress points. There goes their comments about safety and temporary business. At what point in the future of the school would St. Benedict's consider the safety of the students in their charge to be a permanent priority? It appears that St. Benedict's is using a temporary health crisis to justify a permanent traffic hazard, simultaneously reducing its development costs. By way of history, when St. Benedict's Middle School was approved in 2013, also under a rental agreement, it was with the understanding that the school would purchase that property in 3 years. Approval was contingent upon St. Benedict's installing sidewalks along the road frontage shortly after their sale. However, the school did not close the sale, and consequently, as of today, there are no sidewalks along that road frontage. Sidewalks along that section of Cooper Lake Road and Cumberland Parkway would have been a major safety feature for St. Benedict students and for our community, had the school adhered to its own stated intentions. There should be no ambiguity in the wording of DOT requirements in this case. All DOT recommendations should be strictly enforced, and DOT recommendations should be implemented prior to the occupancy of the building. The number 6 stipulation of July 31 references inclusion of a traffic plan. As I mentioned, it was not included. Neither was the rendering of the building referenced in the applicant's June 25th stipulation letter attached. So we don't have that information. I don't know whether you received it or not. Since renovations of the school building are well underway. It is apparent that St. Benedict's anticipates approval in accordance with all its preferences. However, this decision does not lie in the hands of the applicant. You will note the staff comments included for approval included all DOT comments. Oakdale Community Association Board respectfully requests that this board recommend approval of C38 and SLUP 6 for the following stipulations. Deletion to low-rise office. All DOT recommendations implemented prior to certificate of occupancy. Inclusion of rendering attached to June 25 stipulation letter. Inclusion of traffic plans referenced but not attached to July 31 letter, and of course the change in the wording of Cumberland Parkway access to Atlanta Road. I provided you a copy of the stipulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rose. Is there any other speakers?
No, sir.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and this is back to this board, and Alice is handling this case as well.
Yes, if Kevin can come back up, please. I can't see Kevin.
There he is.
Okay.
Hello.
All right.
And he went away. There he is. He's back. So I think go ahead, Alice. I think you might be muted now, Alice, or something. I can't hear you. I can't, it doesn't show Alice is muted, but there you are.
Hi, just wanted to clarify a couple things. So in reality, you are shifting traffic. Okay. We're shifting traffic, running new traffic. Well, I'm not, no. Okay, how about working?
Yes, I believe your question was in reality, we are shifting traffic rather than generating traffic. Is that your question?
Is it working? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Yes, it seems like you might be having a little bit of a choppy signal, Alice.
Okay, sorry about that. Don't know how to fix on the floor. So because we're shifting students from the adjacent location, there was no traffic study that was required.
Correct.
Did that come through?
That's my understanding, that because it's not, we presented the carpool plans, which have more than sufficient stacking, as well as simply shifting existing students from next door to this location, not adding students. This is not a measure to add campus space. This doesn't have anything to do with any intention of St. Benedict's to add space or some need for space. This is totally because of the space that's actually required for COVID compliance to do so safely. You need a lot more space to space students out like that, and that's where this idea came from, which I think is rather brilliant. So yes, it's simply shifting students from next door to this location to free up the space there so that you can space those students out and space it out in this location as well.
And the capacity at this time is for 52 with a maximum of 60?
That's correct.
Okay. And in the stipulation letter, it did not include a rendering or carpool lane plans, but those haven't changed since what was submitted previously. Is
That's correct. There was a previous submittal, and we were just trying to add to that and not take it, wasn't meant to be in place of that. So the prior carpool lanes and the ones that we showed here today, we can assure that those are submitted as part of any recommendation by the planning commission. Would be included.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions at this point if anybody has anything else.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, I'm muted, Judy. You're muted. You're still muted, Judy. You're still muted. I see you talking.
Mute.
There you go.
Can you hear?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Kevin, I have a question for Kevin.
Yes, ma'am.
Kevin, this site is a temporary use because of the virus, correct?
Correct.
This is for the 4th grade, is my understanding. And this is all because of the virus and people are wanting to put their children into the private schools instead of public. So many public schools are closed. So thus is why we're trying to decide on this one. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's very correct. I mean, this is where this came from, is because in order to open safely, we have to space students out. A lot more space is needed than normal. And so we need the space in the existing school, and by moving these 4th graders to this location, we can safely put distancing in the classrooms for the 4th graders, and then by having that additional space next door, we can then safely spread out the students at that location. So that's why this is occurring, totally.
And then the other consideration is the applicant really doesn't own this piece of property. They're leasing it. Is that correct?
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything, Fred? Okay. I have a question for DOT. We have DOT on the line.
Amy Diaz, DOT.
Hey, Amy. I'm looking at this drop-off plan, and I'm wondering about, they have 2 drop-off points, but one of them is only about 5-6 cars into the carpool line. I'm afraid dropping off people there could create backup in and of itself. Have you reviewed that, and are you okay with it?
Yes, we did provide comment on that if there's any traffic backup to Cooper Lake, that closing that one would be one of the things they should look at.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. That was my comment, so we'll go back to Alice.
All right. I would like to make a motion to approve Z38 as recommended by staff. I believe O&I is the appropriate zoning category for this case, as this building is contiguous to the existing St. Benedict School, which is zoned O&I. The school is currently only planning to lease this building for 1 year because of COVID, with an option for an additional year, and they will have a maximum of 60 4th grade students. Regarding the driveway at Atlanta Road, the school will need to permanently close this driveway and add a raised curb. As long as St. Benedict School is leasing this location, I would recommend the Board of Commissioners waive the following DOT recommendations until the property owner develops the land. Number 1, regarding curb, gutter, and sidewalks on Atlanta Road as well as Cooper Lake Road. Number 2, regarding deceleration lane and left turn lane on Cooper Lake Road. And number 3, regarding donation of right-of-way on Atlanta Road and Cooper Lake Road. My approval is subject to the stipulation letter dated 7/31/2020 from Kevin Moore and site plan received by the Zoning Division on May 7th of 2020, with the District Commissioner approving minor modifications and subject to stormwater management comments and recommendations, water and sewer comments and recommendations, and DOT's comments and recommendations, not otherwise in conflict with what I outlined above. So to be clear, this zoning is for St. Benedict's only, and any other development will have to incorporate all DOT recommendations.
Second.
Okay, do we have discussion? Okay, I do have some discussion on it. I do think the donation of right-of-way should occur because we're rezoning it and this is the time that we can get it in there. I don't, in case it's needed. And the property owner is getting rent out of the property. So I don't see a problem with getting to do that. I would also like to see the requirements for St. Benedict's, because I know they may want to purchase it or they may continue leasing it long-term. And we're trying to help them out in case this is a short term, that those DOT stipulations are only waived for, say, a 2-year period. And after that, they do have to comply if they continue leasing. And get your thoughts on that, Alice?
I do know St. Benedict's would like to purchase in the future if they're able to work out a price. But I just couldn't bring myself to put these requirements in when they're leasing it for now for a temporary use.
Right, and that's what I was saying. If they continue beyond the potential 2-year, then it's not a temporary use. They've made it a permanent use. That's why I'm saying they should fully comply if they go past 2 years.
I was gonna incorporate something about that in my SLUP motion 6 motion.
Okay, I think it might be wise to put it in here as well. To make it.
I think you can cover it in the SLUP.
We probably can, but we can cover it both places and have it well covered. That way, I think it's a stronger legal position. If we put it.
Well, since it's a temporary thing and it has a SLUP, I think the SLUP will take care of it. We don't have to put it in there since they don't own the property. And she did outline as to the DOT comments would kick in at such time as redevelopment occurred. So she didn't waive anything.
Or well, she did waive or redevelopment, but redevelopment's a bit of nebulous. Let's see, did we make it clear that this rezoning's for St. Benedict's only?
Yes, she did. Yeah.
Okay, let's make sure that we have that well established so that if it's going to be redeveloped, it's going to have to come back for rezoning. I just want to make sure, St. Benedict's redevelops it, then we haven't said it has to come back, although it's site plan specific, so they have to come for something.
Yeah, I think we have it covered enough. And then when you hear the SLUP, so if we could just call the question on that one, then we could cover the SLUP and maybe that would answer the question.
Okay, I'll let it go. Okay, with no further discussion, let's call the question. All those in favor, raise your hands. I guess it passes 4-0 with Tony recused. And now we'll take the motion for the SLUP.
All right, in regards to SLUP 6, I would make a motion for it to be reviewed in 24 months by the Planning Commission to see if the applicant has purchased the property.
Okay, but we have to make a motion to approve it subject to the stipulations and just approve it for 24 months, which will make them have to come back. So we want all staff comments. Well, we are waiving some in there though, because I assume it has the same stipulations as same DOT stipulations. So we need to be clear that we're waiving some of those.
I think, unless I'm mistaken, I think, John, aren't the stipulations covered in the zoning? And they don't necessarily have to be added to the SLUP?
Well, if you're going to add the same conditions, Alice needs to state it in her motion. They're going to be the same exact conditions.
Oh, okay. So all that, Alice just needs to add the same stipulations that was stated in the rezoning of 38.
Right, and you can just say the same stipulations, Alice.
All right. My motion then would be amended to include the same stipulations as made in my motion to approve Z38.
Okay, thank you. Second's good with that. So is there any further discussion? Okay, call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, looks like we have a 4-0 in favor of SLUP 6 for 24 months. And with that, we can have Tony come back, hopefully, and move on to the next case. Okay, I see Tony back, so we're good.
Okay, next case is rezoning case Z29 of 2020. Seoul Southeast LP Company Incorporated. Request rezoning from R20 to R15 OSC for a single-family residential subdivision. Land lots 415 and 474 of the 19th district. The property is located on the south side of Macklin Road, west of Powder Springs Road. The applicant is present, and there is no one virtually or in person here to oppose this case. We would ask that the board present their case at this point.
Dang, you don't have no opposition, go.
I think they worked out with the opposition, which is good.
Yay.
Things, in fact, you know, if remember, Kevin's ready. Kevin, since we have no opposition and we've heard this twice, can you just narrow it down and just give us, you know, what you did to change since the last one quickly?
Sure. I was hoping you would ask. Yes, they'll pull this up, but yes, from the last hearing, if you recall, we presented this, had worked out an arrangement and agreement support with the adjacent neighbors. The Planning Commission, however, voted and had some very specific, really some site plan items that you wanted to make sure were included and covered. This site plan you're seeing now is the rendered version, which just gives you a really good idea of the immense amount of open space as part of this R15 OSC. But if we'll go to the next slide, is really the technical drawing, which is where this came into play. And what we did is we worked very diligently to include all of the comments that had been made by direction from the Planning Commission. To highlight those, we have ensured that number one, we have the amenity area that is now, that is the active amenity area is now in fact shown, where we have pool, parking, and so forth that's shown on the plan. Other amenity areas are passive in terms of the open space, but now that is shown. We also have the 10-foot buffer, perimeter buffer against adjacent residential that is also now included on this plan. We have also taken the opportunity to extend additional parallel parking spaces along a better distribution pattern, which was also a comment. We have also ensured that the access onto Macklin Road and the detail of that access plan is consistent with DOT's recommendations as well that's there. In the meantime, we have continued to update and be in contact with our southern adjacent neighbors. Those are the ones on your left-hand side of the screen, actually north is to the right. We continue to update them and ensure that the commitments we have made are in place or will be in place. You recall, we do have a landscape planning plan that we have incorporated into our stipulations that remain the same. We did have some utility, sewer and water easements that we had committed in working with Cobb Water and Sewer. It was their feeling that there needed to be some further technical review of that and plan review, and that simply providing for those now with zoning would be inappropriate. So we did change our stipulations to reflect that we are offering to maintain that commitment to provide easements for connectivity for water and sewer for those adjacent residents that they want to take advantage of that, but those locations will be determined in plan review in accordance with Cobb Water and Sewer's comments. I think that's a much better way to do that, and that's what we have worked out both with Cobb and with these adjoining residents. Again, we think this is a fantastic plan. Toll Brothers is very excited about entering this market, this location. It's going to be a fabulous subdivision of R15 OSC in compliance with your open space requirements and the OSC requirements. And you'll have yet another fantastic subdivision in this stretch, zoned R15 OSC like the others. And I think it makes for a great subdivision, a great addition to this area of West and Southwest Cobb. With respect to request your recommendation for approval, and I might also ask that it would be appropriate consideration for the consent agenda as well, given all the work that's been done to date in our agreement with the neighbors. One of whom's here today to watch, make sure what happens, and we're happy to see him. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And just to verify, there's no opposition.
They're nodding yes, there's no opposition.
Okay. With that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and it's back to this board, and I'm handling this case. Just there's a few minor things that I don't think we have to hold it up anymore on. One of them being the on-street parallel parking. I'm going to guess the fire marshal or DOT may want those spread even a little bit more. So I'm just going to add in the motion that can be adjusted based on any recommendations from DOT or that. Also, adjacent to the parallel parking, they ended the sidewalks at the parallel parking spots, and they really need to go around the parallel parking spots, which may require them to do a little bit more than a 50-foot right-of-way in those areas, so they can adjust the site plan for that. And then there is the language about the utility easements in the stipulation letter. I'll add a stipulation that any utility easements has to fully comply with all county ordinance regulations and standards. The stipulation letter didn't have the elevations that we saw in previous hearings. So I'm going to say that the front elevations of all homes will be at least 50% brick or stone with district commissioner, and also typical stuff on garages. So is there any further discussion before I actually make a motion? No, don't see any. So I'll say regarding Z29, I make a motion to recommend approval subject to all the following. All staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. The site plan dated July 28th, 2020, which was received on July 29th, 2020, with the following changes. The location of on-street parallel parking spots may be adjusted during plan review to meet the recommendations of DOT or fire marshal. Sidewalks to be provided adjacent to the parallel parking spots, which may require the right-of-way to be greater than 50 feet in those areas. All stipulations in the letter from Kevin Moore dated July 29th, 2020, not otherwise in conflict, with the following change. Item number 16, add to the end, any utility must comply with all county ordinances, regulations, and standards. And then another stipulation, the front elevation of all homes to have at least 50% brick or stacked stone, the district commissioner to approve all elevations. Garages to be used primarily for the parking of vehicles with only incidental storage that does not interfere with the parking of vehicles. And that we, one other item, besides the brick and stone, any other siding material to be a cement-based product, because that was left out of the stipulation letter, normally see. And then inclusion on the consent agenda for the Board of Commissioners. And that's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second from Judy. Any further discussion? Oh, that was Alice. I'm sorry. Okay, second from Alice. And any further discussion? With that, all those in favor, raise your hand. Looks like it passes 5-0. Thank you. What's next, John?
Okay, next is rezoning case Z33 of 2020, Courtyard Development Group LLC. The applicant requests rezoning from R80 to RRC for the purpose of multi-family dwelling units. Then lot 879 of the 17th district. Property is located on the north side of Windy Ridge Parkway, east of Cobb Parkway. The applicant is present, and there is no one here in person or virtual to oppose this case. At this point, I would ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation.
Mr. Chairman? Galt, can you hear me?
Yes.
Galt, I'm recusing myself from this matter, and I'm just going to turn my tablet sideways so nobody can see me react to anything.
There's a thing to shut off video, a little icon next to the mute your mic, if you just want to do that.
I'm fine.
Okay. Okay. And we'll take it from there whenever the applicant's ready.
Morning again, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of Floyd Development in this application for rezoning. This property, which is 4 acres, 4.02 acres, is located on Windy Ridge, directly across the intersection with Heritage Court and Power Alley. This property that is located directly adjacent to the Battery development. And is being proposed for rezoning from R80 to RRC for a mixed-use development of multifamily as well as retail. Just a little bit about this property in terms of the site plan that you see now before you. What we were proposing to do is create a multifamily development that has a full amenity. This is done in the wrap style of development so that the parking deck would be fully shielded from view surrounding roadways, and you can see the parking deck there in the center as well, and see how that's wrapped around it. The yellow you see on the right-hand side is where you have first floor retail and restaurant opportunities, as well as an outdoor plaza area that will certainly go into further detail as we move through this. But you can see that the building and this design for this project is intentionally done so that it will react to its surroundings with the Battery primarily as one that looks as if it's an extension of the Battery, though different, but an extension of the overall feel that you get of development for this location in terms of its orientation to the street on Windy Ridge. You can see that it's oriented exactly like the ones buildings that are similarly of height. This is a 5-story building, similarly of height across the street. With the Battery of similar height and also oriented to Windy Ridge Parkway in the same manner. So that you can see just from an absolute layout standpoint, this is done intentionally to be a part of this overall Battery community and experience. And we've even taken extraordinary steps to ensure that as well with this plan. As you know, this area has additional multifamily developments that are standalone or as part of a mixed use such as the Battery. This particular property and where it sits is ideally situated for additional multifamily and retail offerings if done correctly, which we think we have. To the rear of this property is existing apartments that are older but yet very functional and successful. And what we are proposing, we believe it's exactly in with what this area continues to demand in terms of market and in terms of look and feel. Going to the next slide, I think is going to be very helpful for the next piece of this as we move through this. The next slide is the detail plan, and it's just a little easier to see on our civil detail plan. But one of the more outstanding features that this applicant, that Floyd Development, took upon itself in going through this application process. Naturally, we were very much engaged with the Braves organization, their operations both for game day and during the Battery. And one of their number one issues along at Windy Ridge, one of their big issues has always been the post-game experience with the fans and the ride share. If you've been to a Braves game and taken an Uber or a Lyft, you know that just to the down Windy Ridge, almost adjacent to this property, there's an existing right-hand lane of the 2 lanes of Windy Ridge is used as a dedicated ride-share lane. And of course, that removes a lane of traveling traffic from Windy Ridge in order for that to occur. There's a sidewalk and some street lights, but if you're waiting for to get picked up at that time after an event at the Battery or after a Braves game, when we get back to that, you were standing on the sidewalk and waiting on those cars in that existing lane. Well, we recognized that and thought, Florida Development said, what if we can address that issue and do so in a much more positive fashion and continue the full day, the game day experience or event experience at the Battery and have a situation where we create this outdoor plaza space that is open to the public, as well as create our own and construct and install a new additional lane across our frontage that can act as a rideshare lane. If Cobb County wants to do that, which we think they will do, it can act as a rideshare lane during events, and otherwise it's public right of way, so they can do that. But we took it upon ourselves that we can construct that full lane, construct and orient an outdoor plaza area, as you can see on the right-hand side, that can act as a much more enjoyable, safe location for individuals to wait on their ride, interact with the restaurant retail offerings that we have throughout that outdoor space. And when we turn to these next couple of slides, you'll start to really see the vision that's being shown here. First, you see the building elevation and rendering that we proposed. You can see that plaza area, how it, number one, interacts with the proposed building, and number two, how it interacts with Windy Ridge. And you can see exactly kind of the vision that Florida Development had, and throughout our discussions with the Braves about how we could really continue that game day or event experience for individuals and solve it. It's been an existing issue or problem, and do so in a manner that really elevates that. And also, when you see this, if we go back one more before we get to the next one, if you'll see how the building itself takes and borrows from some of the best aspects of the Battery's design, and then builds on that with interesting roof lines, decks, and so forth, as well as materials that really heighten the richness of this area and of this proposed project. When you go to the next slide, thanks for that, you can now get a more detailed look at how this plaza area will operate, water features, pavilion, and where it really provides a much more natural place for there to be rideshare pickup lane at this location to really extend the experience of the Battery, so that if you're at the Battery and you come to this area, you do not feel like you necessarily have gone to someplace else. You're just a continuation of the same and heightened quality that we're proposing here with the pedestrian activity and a natural location to stop off and wait for your car if it's after an event or a game, or in this case, if you live there, a great location for really a passive amenity to enjoy a cup of coffee or your favorite beverage at this location in Greenfield. One of the issues that came up as well with DOT, and speaking of this rideshare, if I could go back to the slide with that one's fine. With this rideshare lane, and DOT does have a potential project that has been discussed with CID. There's not it doesn't even have a project number and doesn't have project funding, but the idea would be to add a third whole lane to Windy Ridge Parkway. We are already providing that third lane across our frontage, but in the event that DOT ultimately has a project, they would want there to be a decel lane area for this project. That would result in us having to shift some things around. They've asked that we not have any permanent structures within that area. That results in a design shift for us of about 11 feet, which we can accomplish. Our engineers have looked at that. Once we received that comment, discussing that with DOT over the last week and a half, we're not able to make that change on that design level in that short a period of time, but our engineers were able to review it in detail, and that accommodation can certainly be made in the next few days to have that design change. It just simply shifts that building around a little bit, moves it back a little bit and over a little bit so that it can accommodate DOT's request, so that in the future, should there actually be a third lane of Windy Ridge added for the entire length of Windy Ridge, this property would not be adversely affected by that, and that project could go through. So again, you see Flournoy Development continuing their public support with their private dollars to accommodate the necessary issues that are arising out of the success of the battery, game day and battery related events at this location. We do have a very detailed stipulation letter where these renderings are attached and stipulated to, dated July 29th. We think this has been a fantastic project to bring forward, in particular given the very positive discussions, there were multiple, with the Braves, with Cobb County, to understand exactly what's needed. And the fact that this developer, Flournoy Development, came forward and said, hey, we've got an idea to solve it, I think is remarkable and laudable in its own right. With that, we respectfully request your recommendation of approval, subject to the July 29th stipulation letter, and subject to all staff comments and recommendations, including those of Cobb DOT. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Do we have any opposition?
If they're shaking their head, no opposition.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public portion and back to this board, and Tony's handling this case. So go ahead.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Is Amy Diaz with us, please?
Amy Diaz, DOT.
Amy, good morning. Real quick on DOT recommendations, your recommendation number 2, you specified a 65-foot right-of-way donation from center line. Is 65 feet what you need for this third lane on Windy Ridge, or what would be the correct amount to accommodate the third lane?
Are you speaking of the additional decel lane that we have requested them not to build in, or just the decel lane that they have shown?
Well, the sufficient, Kevin mentioned an additional 11 feet that would accommodate a full third lane along the frontage in the future. So I'm trying to figure out how best to address that or word that for, for right-of-way donation.
Basically, for right-of-way donation, we have 2 requests. We had one that is the standard one based on the classification of the roadway, and then we have another one that goes into when in the future a third lane is built, a third travel lane is built, that the area for the lanes, which would become like a 4th lane in the westbound direction. That's what I'm kind of trying to clarify. That at least not have any permanent structures, and if they're willing to donate the right of way now, then that's something we would recommend. But the critical bit is that they don't have any permanent structures built on that area, so that we can come back through and acquire it in the future if need be.
Okay, thank you. Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Okay, real quick, can you run through for the record the mix of units in terms of number of bedrooms?
I can. I just need to pull that information. In terms of number of bedrooms and percentage breakdown, this is in 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. This, I think, is very consistent with what's been done in the area as far as trying to minimize the more 3-bedroom units for purposes of school impact. This will be approximately 69% 1 bedrooms, 28% 2 bedrooms, and 3% 3 bedrooms.
All right, great. And based upon that percentage of 1-bedroom units, that is what is affecting or driving the variance for the number of parking spaces, correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay. And you also showed the revised rendering for the facades and such. And those will apply on all, I guess you would say, all three sides of this building?
Correct.
Okay, I know from the first proposal, there's been a lot of work done to work on the buffer and the setback on the rear that faces the Ashford 75 apartments. Have you spoken with them?
Yes, we had some contact with them previously, correct.
And what were their thoughts? I mean, I assume you spoke with management on that. What was?
They were supportive of our efforts and just wanted to, that was about it. They didn't have a whole lot to say, but they were not, did not have any objection to what we were proposing when we shared all of our plans with them.
Okay. I mean, that's an area that's still of concern. I mean, obviously, we always look to provide a sufficient buffer and setback between residential developments, even when we're in the rack. I know that last month we had the mix up with somebody who was here in opposition at that time, and that caused us to have to hold it. So I really don't want to unnecessarily hold this again this month. I think it's an issue that the district commissioner can address, and that you can work on with him in the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
That's the only questions I had. Any questions or comments from the other commissioners?
I don't see any, so go ahead with your motion.
All right, I'd like to make a motion then that we recommend approval of Z23, subject to the site plan received and dated on July 28th, to be revised to reflect the movements to provide the additional right-of-way discussed for the third lane. All variances noted on the site plan. Fire department comments and recommendations. Stormwater management recommendations, water and sewer recommendations, and DOT recommendations and comments not in conflict with the site plan and the issues that we just modified.
Tony, this is Brian. Can you restate your motion to include the correct number on the zoning application?
Oh, Z33. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much. This would be a recommend approval of Z33.
Okay, any other stipulations? Or was that all, Tony?
That's all.
Okay, do I have a second? I see Judy talking, but I can't hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, I asked Tony if he considered putting it on the consent agenda.
We've got the other items that need to be resolved on the setback in the right of way. So I'd like to leave it off the consent agenda so that they can continue to work on those.
All right.
Okay, and did you second, Judy?
Yes.
Okay, second from Judy. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Let's call for the vote. All in favor, raise your hand. And that passes 4-0 with Fred recused.
And could we have a short break?
Sure. We'll take a 10-minute break.
Thank you.
Thank you. welcome back from the break. And I believe we've completed all our zoning cases. Is that correct, John?
Correct.
Okay, so now we're on to the study, the Josh study.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it in, and I think Jason Gaines is going to take over from here. We do have one speaker here in person who wants to make a comment after the presentation by Mr. Gaines.
Okay, great.
So, OB number 2 is to consider a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners regarding the Johnson Shelf Road Small Area Plan, also known as the Josh Study. At this point, Jason Gaines will take it over, and when Jason's done, there's one person who wants to make a comment.
Okay, and just for informational purposes, I believe people have 3 minutes to make comments.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Planning Commission. This is Jason Gaines, Cobb Community Development. And yes, this is intended to be a public hearing, so anyone who would want to ask questions or make a comment will be able to do so once the chair opens the public hearing portion. Let me go ahead and get the PowerPoint presentation up. Need to share my screen in order to do that. And let's see, share content. Okay, that on. Start the presentation. All right. All right, can everyone see my screen?
We can see it.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure. All right, okay. This Johnson Ferry Shallowford Master Plan was a process that the Planning Division and Community Development commenced back in early 2018. We partnered with staff from Parks, DOT, as well as the Stormwater Management Division from Cobb County Water System to engage the community who lives in the vicinity of the Johnson Ferry Shallowford intersection with idea of creating a concept plan to guide the future vision for that area. As many know, this is an area that's primarily residential in nature, with the one major commercial node being the area around Johnson Ferry and Shallowford, which is why it's kind of served as the epicenter for this. Commissioner Ott, as well as several key area residents and business owners, were the catalyst behind commencing this study, and we just wanted to share with you a brief summary of the background and the recommendations that evolved from the work of staff, as well as feedback obtained through the public engagement process. And we'll go to the next one. Okay, so quality of life, location to jobs, and excellent schools attract are several of the factors that attracted people to this area. Additionally, because the area has already been well established, has a pretty good climate, and has an excellent system of elementary schools that feed into the middle and high schools, as well as Cobb's excellent provision of services to its citizens. A lot more empty nesters are choosing to stay in the area once they've raised families and kids have been matriculated through school and gone on to college and gone off to live their lives. So that was one of the other major factors in terms of looking at land use around here. How can we make this a community that is conducive to an age and place type environment? The overall purpose of the plan is to develop a redevelopment strategy that provides policy guidance to landowners, developers, staff, and elected officials, and makes use of land use recommendations and infrastructure investment decisions. The idea was to leverage community pride to foster a community identity and a sense of place. And thirdly, the idea was to establish or enhance quality of life through the use of infrastructure and focusing on compatibility between the old and the new, the existing condition on the ground, as well as how new development and redevelopment would assimilate with what's already existing on the ground. So let's talk a little bit about the plan process itself. You had a 3-step process, which resulted in a plan that consists of 5 key elements. And this is pretty standard for the types of master plans that our group has been known to prepare. So we had the 3 phases, and they all kind of build off of one another. Research and analysis of the existing conditions within the study area, an extensive community engagement program highlighted by multiple public meetings that allow interested parties to share ideas and to provide input, and the actual drafting of the plan, which is a culmination of the work from the previous 2 phases. So again, it builds off of itself as it moves forward. So we've got 5 key elements: land use, transportation, parks and green space, stormwater management, and sense of place. Land use is the primary element, actually, which was kind of pretty much driven by issues and concerns that were identified by community members and addressed through the conceptual and land use plan recommendations that you'll see later in this presentation. The transportation recommendations were identified through the public participation phase, and there are recommendations that will be coordinated and prioritized through our partnership with Cobb County DOT and their effort to update the county's comprehensive transportation plan. Stormwater management. This area has a history of this being a topic of concern, and to help address those concerns, the plan includes this element, and it offers recommendations to mitigate impacts from flooding and resulting soil erosion. When it comes to parks and green space, the study area focused in part upon identifying needs for new parks, trail connectivity, both within itself as well as connectivity to trails leading to other areas within the county. Existing park assets and other green space goals that were identified through the community engagement process. And then their sense of place. This element was developed to assist in enhancing, the identity of the area, knowing that this is where you are once you set foot. This promotes a quality community that articulates a sense of identity, aesthetically pleasing buildings, and streetscape design that, again, has been identified through the public participation phase of the planning process. Okay. This map is an overview of the study area. Locationally, in the inset, you'll see where this is relative to Cobb County as a whole. Of course, we focus on the Johnson Ferry at Shallowford intersection. Hopefully you guys can see my cursor. I don't know if you can or not. Just kind of nod your head if you can. Okay. Well, we're focused on the Johnson Ferry and Shallowford intersection, but and we started with a smaller area initially, but through both stakeholder engagement, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, stakeholders initially, and then the public at large, we expanded our study area to extend east all the way to the Fulton County line, north to Sandy Plains Road in the vicinity of the Sandy Plains at Highway 92 intersection, to a line west that follows portions of Wesley Chapel Road, that extends south to a line that is just south of and parallel to Post Oak Tritt Road. So this provides us with an area that is approximately 4,200 acres in size, and encompasses primarily single-family residential uses. The area has a favorable proximity to some major employment centers, including major community improvement districts such as Town Center, Cumberland, as well as Perimeter over in DeKalb County. Then you've got good access to commercial centers in Marietta, Roswell, as well as Alpharetta. So it's very centrally located. It's got good proximity. It's a pretty decent road network as well that can pretty much get you anywhere within a decent amount of time. Of course, traffic is always a major factor there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But this was just kind of to orient everyone, just to kind of let folks know the area that we study for this exercise. So let's talk a little bit about the community engagement piece. Like I mentioned before, this is pretty standard for what we do. This is standard for pretty much any master planning exercise. You've got to get input from area residents, property owners, business owners, and other individuals with a stake as to what happens within your area of study. We held 6 community meetings to help facilitate this. All 6 meetings were held at the same location. That's Chestnut Ridge Christian Church at the corner of Johnson Ferry and Post Oak Tritt. We held, like I said, 6 meetings initially, 3 initially, I should say. We held 3 initially in the spring of 2018, in March, April, and May, and we ended up taking a bit of a break and retooling one of the major components of that public engagement exercise, which was the image preference survey, which I'll talk about briefly. So we conducted it initially, and then we retooled it at the request of Commissioner Ott. And then we conducted 3 more public meetings in the winter of 2019, January, February, March. So about that image preference survey, we conducted it both in person and online. And the intent was to establish a range of public preferences for the area that could help in the development of possibly future design standards or design guidelines. And there was a bit of controversy in terms of some of the images provided in the initial version of that study. So that's why we ended up pausing the proceedings and retooling the survey to be a bit more palatable to some of the community members who were involved in the process. So that's part of why we started that in 2018, this exercise in 2018, and 2 years later, we're now before you looking to move it forward. So we had the image preference survey. We've had a significant virtual engagement piece. We created a project website that was kind of a ground zero for all information related to the study documentations. We created a project framework document that kind of summarized the existing conditions as well as the background and purpose behind conducting the study. All of that information was available on the website. We also utilized our talented folks in our GIS group here in community development to create a crowdsourcing application using our GIS platform, ArcGIS, and the web version of it, ArcGIS Online. And through this crowdsourcing application, it basically served as a map where people could interact with it by posting images that they may have taken with their own cameras, as well as indicating comments associated with those images. So it kind of helped provide a visual as to what a condition on the ground might look like, and then having that on the map shows you where it is, and that provided valuable input on the part of staff so that we could further develop our recommendations that we turned around and presented to the public and then presented in the study document. So in addition to the public meetings, and kind of as a precursor, a clearinghouse for everything that went out to the public via the public meetings as well as via our website, we had a stakeholder group. We had a focused stakeholder group that consisted of 13 individuals who met 3 times in the spring of 2018. And those meetings were pretty much lead ups to the public meeting. So everything that we were planning to present at the public meetings, the stakeholder group got to preview give us feedback, help us refine and fine tune those presentation pieces so that they would be more palatable for the public. And yes, we did that with the image preference surveys as well, but you can't always avert certain situations. So we ended up going through that process as we did, but the stakeholder group did its part and made good on giving us good feedback in order to take it forward to the public. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the plan framework. This plan framework is designed to establish the foundation for the concept plan recommendations, which are essentially the plan. The framework has two components, a vision statement and guiding principles. The vision statement was something that staff kind of wordsmith, but we basically took direct input from the public, as to what this vision statement would be, because like our other plans, these are community driven. This is a community driven plan. So the idea was to take the words of the public and those interested in this area with a stake in this area and refine it and shape it into something that encapsulates, their vision for the area. And we were able to do that with this brief statement here. Captures the passion, represents what the community desires to be in the future. Guiding principles. The guiding principles summarize and define the community's ideas and attitudes towards the future of the community. Each one of those principles, which is kind of based on plan elements, acts as a building block to the concept plan and the recommendations for each of those 5 elements. In total, this all supports the overarching policies of the Cobb 2040 Comprehensive Plan. All right, so let's move into each of the plan elements and the associated recommendations. Throughout the community engagement process, it was apparent that the preservation of the low-density residential character of the greater community was of paramount importance to many of our community participants in our community engagement process. That was a recurring theme pretty much throughout every topic and subtopic that we discussed with those who participated in our engagement exercises. The project team crafted 2 conceptual land use maps to help articulate this. One was the future character area plan, and the other was the commercial node and land use plan. And I'll talk about each of those in a bit more detail here in a minute. Both of these maps include small area policy guidelines, which, if you all adopt this and the Board of Commissioners adopts this, those small area policy guidelines would be directly integrated into the Cobb 2040 Comprehensive Plan. These small area policy guidelines serve as guidance for future developments and cover aspects such as the type and scale at which future development should occur. The future character area plan includes the entire Josh study area and describes these 2 character areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about this here on the next slide. So let's talk about the commercial node. Commercial node concept plan puts policy focus around the intersection of Johnson Ferry at Shallowford Road. You'll look and you'll see that most of these recommendations are focused on the western side of Johnson Ferry as it approaches Shallowford at the north. And then you've got one area that's on the east side, just north of Freeman Drive, I believe that is. So let's talk a little bit about each of these 6. You'll see 6 uniquely identified areas here within this map, and each of these 6 items represents an individual small area policy guideline. So area 1, as you see, is focused on the southwest quadrant of the Johnson Ferry at Shallowford intersection, and it focuses on a mix of retail and restaurant uses along Shallowford Road closer to the Johnson Ferry intersection, with office serving as a transitional use furthest from the intersection. So in other words, the further west you go away from Johnson Ferry along Charlotteford Road, the intent was to focus on more office uses there and to kind of step up a bit in intensity as you move east towards Johnson Ferry Road. Area 2, which is a little bit south of that, you'll see Area 3 kind of in between, but if you look a little bit south, you'll see Area 2, and it's west set off of Johnson Ferry Road. The idea there is to encourage medium density residential uses such as senior living developments or single family detached homes that would be more typical of an RA5 subdivision. And I said detached, I meant to say attached. So that would be kind of in that vein of, townhome, something transitional to kind of serve as a step up, step down in intensity as you move towards the major corridor there. To help protect the existing lower density single family uses, you would encourage significant buffering with landscaping and a berm along that western edge of Area 2. That would protect the existing neighborhood, as I mentioned, that's there along Waterford Drive. And I know that Waterford kind of cuts through both Area 2 and Area 4 as it comes back to Johnson Ferry. And I just want to make clear that the idea would be for Waterford to remain. We're not taking out or suggesting that we take out Waterford Road. It would remain there, and you would continue to be able to access Johnson Ferry Road via Waterfront Drive. Area 3, looking back north again here. The suggestion there is a parks, recreation, conservation, future land use designation for a possible community park with a couple of different options on how it would be established. The first option would be to work with developers on private development to restore the lake that's there on the property. The second option would be to for it to be a potentially a public use, where you have a joint agreement between Cobb Parks and Cobb County Water System, a joint effort to utilize the restored lake as a regional stormwater facility that would also double as a recreational amenity in the park. There's several examples of that type of use. If you look around the country, even around Metro Atlanta area, one that comes to mind off the top of my head is Old Fourth Ward Park, where you've got that big, it's almost like an amphitheater type setup, but it's actually a stormwater utility as well that's designed to help catch the excess stormwater during heavy rain events. So that was one suggestion for how that could be done in Area 3. Let's move on to Area 4, which is just a little bit south of that and is directly adjacent to Johnson Ferry Road. That is additional commercial uses focused on retail and restaurants. Area 5, just a bit south, more commercial uses focused on office. And then Area 6, which is the only portion that's on the east side of Johnson Ferry Road, there focuses on office uses as well. And that is actually a single parcel, part of an existing shopping center. The idea would be to add that to the county's redevelopment inventory in order to help increase its profile as a redevelopment opportunity for those who may be looking for one. So again, all of this focuses on a transition of uses, more intense as you get closer to the main intersection, less intense as you move away from it. The main intersection being Johnson Ferry at Charlotteford. All right, let's move on to the transportation recommendations. They primarily focus on 4 key areas: intersection improvements, interparcel connectivity, pedestrian connectivity and safety improvements, as well as median improvements. To support improved traffic flow within the study area, the project team assembled a set of proposed projects that would help address concerns that were expressed by the community members, both in person at our community meetings as well as through crowdsourcing and other means of feedback. And we got a lot of emails that focused on community concerns as well. Some of these recommendations, for instance, the intersection improvements, they'll need further study to determine the specific nature of the issues and the best way to mitigate those. And that's pretty much DOT, doing, what they are experts at doing, which is going out and assessing existing conditions along a roadway to determine, whether a signal is warranted or whether a crosswalk could be installed, or, a rapid rectangular flashing beacon or a hawk or some other means of helping move pedestrians more safely across a busy roadway, things like that. So that's kind of what that particular comment refers to. The idea is to evaluate key intersections for efficient and safe travel movements while incorporating non-vehicular safety improvements. Several areas identified by the community that require attention are limiting curb cuts to provide safe return movements to and from commercial uses, pedestrian safety, especially around schools within the study area, filling in sidewalk gaps, and creating better connectivity and addressing line of sight issues at certain intersections where you might have a curve that makes it difficult to turn out from a neighborhood street onto the major roadway. Once the specific nature of projects are identified, they can be potentially incorporated into the comprehensive plan or potentially added as priority projects for the SPLOST. And yes, the 2022 SPLOST list has already been approved, but there are a lot of funds within the SPLOST that do have some discretion based on certain categories. Sidewalks is one of those. So there could be an opportunity to implement some of these recommendations through the SPLOST if it is passed by the voting public. Okay. Parks recommendations focus on creating additional parkland and green space in a manner that provides public health benefits. Recommendations include the water system partnering with property owners to explore the possibility of a joint use facility design to provide a multifaceted to fulfill a multifaceted purpose. Scenic and passive recreational opportunities, such as walking trails, in addition to providing some stormwater controls. This scenario could be linked by a small network of trails that links to the retail and restaurant uses that I talked about on the commercial node map a couple slides earlier, while also providing connectivity to a broader trail network that would take you to other areas of Northeast Cobb and beyond. So there's potential to build that into both a localized and a somewhat mini regionalized connectivity when it comes to building out the trail network. Another recommendation is to pursue the acquisition of floodplains, stream buffers, and temporary conservation easements. Again, all in an effort to kind of serve that joint use, passive recreation, as well as stormwater controls to help prevent flooding and erosion. Other recommendations focus on preservation and connectivity. This includes seeking ways to preserve a historic structure in the area, the Power Jackson Cabin. It also involves building upon a multi-purpose trail concept along Johnson Ferry Road that could, again, like I talked about, kind of a mini regional connectivity piece linking the Wright Environmental Center down just off of Johnson Ferry on Post Oak Trip, linking that with Mabry Park. Tying the proposed regional trail system connecting East Cobb Park, Mountain View Communities facilities, the library and the aquatic center over there off of Sandy Plains, as well as, again, Mabry Park. So, again, providing some of that mini regional connectivity throughout the northeast portion of the county and beyond. These trails could traverse county-owned floodplain, other county-owned properties, as well as access or utilize multi-use paths that would be built along roadways, which is, of course, the most common format we see trails built throughout the county. Okay, 2 more areas, stormwater and then sense of place. So for stormwater, we had a lot of concern over stormwater management, and I think you can probably tell that based on my comments up to this point. Particularly, residents on the northern end of the study area have experienced negative impacts from localized flooding and soil erosion. Opportunities identified via community engagement focused on innovative approaches to stormwater management, improved maintenance on existing infrastructure, and educating the public. One of the more debated solutions that was talked about through our planning process was the potential for a regional stormwater utility fee. As a recommendation, exploring the option of a stormwater utility fee could set up a funding mechanism to assist maintenance and development of new stormwater management infrastructure. That's something that we talked about it because it was something that the public, talked about extensively, but that is a broader policy discussion when you talk about the county as a whole. So we mention it, but we don't really press upon it, in the study. But we at least wanted to acknowledge that this is something that was talked about extensively during community engagement, and we just wanted to make sure that that reflects the nature of this plan being, again, community driven. Another innovative approach, or more innovative approach, to improving stormwater controls and incentivizing the use of LID, or low impact development standards, which is something I know that the water system had been working on previously, late last year and earlier this year. LID standards can be part of BMPs, or best management practices, for stormwater control. Community members were concerned about the maintenance of existing culverts and deterioration of riparian vegetation along streams due to stormwater runoff. A maintenance repair plan can help identify and prioritize which culverts are in need of repair. Not just culverts, but other infrastructure related to stormwater as well. Conducting a stormwater management plan specific to the Willio Creek Basin could provide recommendations for effective watershed improvement strategies to address already impacted watersheds and streams, as well as identify retrofits and restoration techniques. Other recommendations focus on educational components of stormwater management, such as the importance of maintaining lakes and dams and the proper process that goes into upkeep and preservation of dams. Conducting stormwater seminars to inform citizens about the negative environmental impacts of stormwater, such as erosion, trash and lawn debris, and pollution prevention methods, was also put forward as a recommendation. The JOSH plan recommends authorizing, prioritizing, and continuing to seek funding for the acquisition of floodplain within the Willio Creek watershed. This could help reduce insurance costs and taxpayer-funded disaster relief for flood victims, as well as to ensure that floodplain areas provide a multifaceted public benefit in terms of flood control, wildlife protection, passive recreation, and natural assimilation of non-point source pollutants. Other recommendations include incentivizing the reduction of impervious surface percentages, establishing parking maximums as opposed to minimums, replicating pre-development runoff characteristics to the maximum extent practicable, working with property owners and/or developers to restore the reservoir at the southwest quadrant of the Johnson Ferry-Shallowford intersection, which was talked about on the concept plan for the nodes. I believe that was area 3, no, area 2. No, it was area 3 because that was the one in the PRC category. So again, this is all tying together, and you'll see a lot of recurring themes throughout this. And the final slide covers the sense of place element. Through our community engagement process, area residents and stakeholders have expressed a strong desire to improving a sense of identity. This desire implies that future development should be considerate of the community character, including future design elements, form, scale, and patterns. Again, a recurring theme throughout this whole exercise. To help enhance the uniqueness of the community and to set the area apart from surrounding communities, this sense of place element recommends establishing design guidelines to enhance the identity of the area. They could influence they would influence extra attention to detail that brings together the built environment. This involves a unified and controlled approach to aspects such as signage, street lights, traffic signal poles and mast arms, as well as a streetscape plan and landscape medians. High quality building materials are necessary to create the type of community envisioned in the JOSH plan. All these features can be accomplished through the recommended design guidelines or through the creation of design guidelines. As a benefit, through the JOSH small area plan process, the image preference survey that we conducted provides a starting point to establish a range of public preferences that could potentially lay the foundation for a design guidelines package for this area. Other recommendations to assist in creating sense of place include welcome gateway features that will promote the community and help the area look more cohesive, accommodating, and attractive. As used in other parts of the county, a pedestrian light district could be set up to help fund the installation and maintenance of pedestrian lights. A more difficult and sometimes costly task of burying utility equipment is also one way of boosting the community's image. So getting rid of all the above ground lines and poles that oftentimes create a cluttered visual. That's what that would involve. Other recommendations use community-based initiatives to help improve the overall quality of the area. So that is the conclusion of this presentation. It was a bit long, but I know each of you had an opportunity, each of you on the Planning Commission had an opportunity to look over the document, and we had a discussion at work session last week. I'm sure you may have some more questions as well, so I'm definitely available to answer any questions as well as any that may come from the public. So thank you for your time, and
thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. Obviously, the staff's put a lot of work and time into this plan, and they pulled together a lot of information. This is, I think it covers both District 2 and 3 in portions, not the entire districts, either one, but is that correct?
No, this is entirely in District 2. Now, there are some areas that were once in District 3 before the redrawing of the commission district lines, but Wesley Chapel is the cutoff. For instance, Z40 that was continued earlier today actually straddles the district boundary. The west side of that development is in Commission District 3. The east side is in Commission District 2 and is within the JOSH study area.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. So I think I'll start with Tony, since this is in his district. And that.
All right. Well, it's just, hey, welcome new commissioner. Here's something to catch up on. People have worked on for 2 years, you get 2 weeks. So no, I appreciate it. And Galt, I agree. The product that's presented is great. It reflects a lot of community input. And you mentioned the zoning on Z40. Actually, we had citizens for Z40 and Z37 who sent comments and referenced the pending JOSH plan as part of their comments on what we should consider for the zoning. So it certainly is not a dead document by any means. People are paying attention and referencing it. I've got just a couple of little recommendations. I don't think it's anything substantial or major.
Hey,
Yes.
Hey, this is John down in the meeting room. There's one person who wanted to make a comment. I'm not sure if you want to.
Exactly.
Yes, I forgot about that, so let's go ahead and have that open the public hearing
Okay.
and let the person make comments. It's Kevin.
Good morning again, commissioners. And I'm sorry I didn't get rid of me yet. I do have, since this is a public hearing, I am a attorney for and represent Fred and Lynn Hanna, who are a major owner of property that's bullseye of the Josh study. They in fact own areas 1 through 4 as designated in the Josh study that are along the western, that form the western intersection of Johnson Ferry and Shallowford Road. They own 1 through 4 areas. And so on their behalf, I am here to make a single comment. The county has gone through a lot of work in this area and on this study, but I do need to object to one piece of it. In the land use recommendation, specifically the land use recommendation for Area 3, it is calling out a large, significant portion of their private property for a public park use. This is a planning document, and announcing that this private property is to be set aside for public use or a public park use or something similar, it gives immediate rise to a claim on their behalf for inverse condemnation. The county plans to take it for a public park or acquire it. Fantastic, they need to acquire it. But to designate it in a future planning and development document as a public use to be a public park is something that we object to as a private property owner. Also, as a part and parcel of that, there's references to restoration of the lake. And I think it's important for this commission and the county as a whole to understand that lake is currently being drained under a proper permit as we speak. So there is no lake for purposes of this study. And so I just want to make those facts and objections known on their behalf as it relates to that one small component. But we believe that's a dangerous area for the county to go into, is to adopt a future planning document that designates private property for a public use because of the precedent that sets and the claim that gives immediately to any property owner, including the Hannas. And we prefer not to have that. We'd like to move forward with their project without having public park designation as a part of any of their property. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I had those same concerns just reading through the plan. So, okay, and I think, was there anybody else who wanted to speak? I don't see any. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing portion. And now we'll come back to Tony to finish up his comments.
Okay, well, everybody got to the same place there. So that helps. Who would address, I mean, obviously we can change the land use plan, or we can even have guidelines and an area guideline. And they remain just guidelines. So I'm without undoing what the public vision has been for that space. What are the options here? Maybe Brian, can you comment on that for us?
Or possibly Jason too.
Well, I see Brian step. Brian, you want to go?
Okay.
So you want me to?
Whoever prefers to do it.
Well, since someone said the word claim of inverse condemnation, let's start with Brian.
Okay.
That certainly is a legal terminology. That's a serious claim to make that requires numerous thresholds to prove. That's claims like that are thrown around often, whether or not they were followed through with or can be proven as a different situation. Policies which could potentially change uses should be taken seriously and carefully vetted and weighed as these kind of area plans are vetted and endorsed.
Okay, do you have any comments, Jason? And we'll go back to questions.
No, I just wanted to, not necessarily piggybacking off of Brian, but yeah, I mean that is, there's a certain threshold that you definitely would have to, reach, and I don't know that we've reached that with what we've put in this plan. And in parks, recreation, conservation category does suggest a public use, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a public use per se. Also, if you look at what we recommended in terms of the options, one was to work with developers to restore it or to, alter its, existing use. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a regional stormwater / recreational facility that's open to the public. So that we provided some options in the plan as to how restoration of that facility could be done for either public or private benefit.
Okay, thanks. And I think Tony might have had a question back there.
No, I think Brian and Jason handled both of the questions. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from other commissioners?
Do you have any, Judy? Since it's near your area. You're still on mute, Judy. Judy, you're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. My question would be, why would we show that? Why we couldn't amend the plan to take that out? The tract of land that we're talking about that they're showing as public or a meeting place.
There's no reason why we couldn't. We could.
Yeah.
What
I think it just sort of makes sense to take it out.
Well, as the planning commission, since you all make the official recommendation to the board of commissioners, it's definitely within your purview to include that as a recommendation or a stipulation within your recommendation to them.
Yeah, I think the attorney had it on behalf of the owners. I think he had a good point as to why it might be difficult in the future to be shown that way. So, thank you, Jason.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll just go down the line here. I see Alice next. Do you have any comments, Alice? Were you done, Judy, by the way?
I'm through, yeah.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
I agree with Judy that should be removed.
Okay, and I think Fred asked me to make my comments first before, so I'll go ahead with some. There's a lot of great detail in here. Obviously, a lot of work and a lot of study and information has gone into it, and I kind of view it as not quite all the way there yet, because what I don't see here is any cost analysis, and there are 8 pages of recommendations and lots of things to be done that can both be costly and time consuming. And also there's no funding really identified for most of the things. There's a talk about maybe a special district for, or not a district, but a tax essentially for stormwater management. But, that concerns me. And one of the things that I've found with the studies that the county's done over the years is we do all these studies, we put these recommendations, but we never have any funding or mechanism to implement anything, and nothing happens. I know there's areas down in my district where I think I've been told 6 different studies on the same little strip of property, and what the people have said when we've gone for those studies is just implement the stuff in the previous study, do something. It doesn't do any good to keep doing it. So I'm really fearful with 8 pages of bullet point, recommendations, and also a number of things that appear to be overarching changes to county policy, or maybe shouldn't be there. We already have enough difficulty implementing a standardized policy all across the county for various things, and see that they already aren't, to start setting up special policies in certain areas really concerns me, such as set up a mechanism to incentivize a percentage of pervious parking in all new developments and redevelopment projects. If we're going to do that, that should be a county-wide thing, not just in a particular area. Same thing, with the stormwater management. I also had concerns about establish a community-based stakeholders association to provide a platform for community collaboration on new development. It says new redevelopment and design guidelines that has the county involved in establishing that. And I don't really think it's the county's job to get involved in putting together community groups. I don't think the county should play a role in, say, ECCA or MIC or PLAN or any of the other groups. And that seems to be, indicating that the county would be involved in that. There's another thing, ensure maintenance of median and other right-of-way landscaping features are on a timely cycle. So the county already has their plans and mechanisms that DOT cuts and does whatever, and that should just fall under the regular county items. If we start taking and saying, oh, we're going to do it different for this area because we did a study for this area, and that we all of a sudden get into problems. And I think there was a lot of DOT recommendations that I thought the same thing, and either what's going to happen with this, in my view, is either it's going to sit there and do nothing, like most of the studies have, or there's going to be an undue amount of resources going to this area and taking it away from other areas. I mean, Cobb County already doesn't have money to repave our roads. If you look at the splosh, they're asking for the vast majority of the next splosh just for repaving roads. So, that's really my whole issue with it, is we have a study here with lots of things. I had concerns about, work with property owners to restore the lake. Well, that sounds good, but should the county really be, putting resources into that? We know there's no money to buy parks land, so the parks aren't going to have the money, and parks already has a lot of land that they don't have money to develop. So it seems like their money and efforts ought to go on the land the county's already bought to develop. So, and that, so those are kind of some of them. There's a lot of good ideas here, but I just don't think this is a practical that something's going to be implemented. So what I think we're doing is maybe setting false expectations for the community. Yes, this is a long list of wants and desires, but I think plans that are adopted by the BOC should be reasonably grounded of things that are actually going to get done. And I don't see any way that the vast majority of this will ever get done. So, but I do appreciate all the hard work, planning put into this, and they pulled together lots of great ideas. I just think it may need to go a little further to identify the cost of things and an actual implementation if we're going to do that. I also think maybe it would be better to pull out and say we're going to develop design guidelines. And do the design guidelines, we're going to pull out and do some small area policies where they make sense to land use plan or change, if we need to change a basic category. But I just fear that this plan is going to be, people are going to bring this back up as you didn't do all these things, and it's not realistic to think that most of that's ever going to get done with the Cobb's current budgeting. Now, the Board of Commissioners wanted to establish a special tax district and tax the people extra. Some of the stuff like the sense of place down in the Six Flags area, there's a special tax district, and that special tax district is paying to do that sense of place. So it's not coming out of general funds or anything that's being paid countywide. The property owners there are paying extra money to get those things done. So I just see that last piece lacking in it. So now I'll turn it over to Fred for his comments.
I really don't have many beyond what you just said. It just seems like there are two large contingencies or obstacles. One is funding for implementation, and the second is Kevin's objection that the plan would have to be changed. It couldn't go forward as submitted. I appreciate the constructive efforts by, I guess, a gang of 13 folks, in addition to the county staff. It's good to plan. It's good. I like it that we're doing constructive planning like this, but I think we just have we have a concept that isn't really able to be realized at this time.
Okay, thank you, Fred. So with that, I guess we need to make some kind of motion regarding this. Tony, it's in your district. Do you want to? Well, you might want to make more comments too after you heard us too. So go ahead.
I would make some more comments. Going back, I don't know, 20 years, when Joe Lee Thompson was district commissioner, his expression that he was fond of was, there are many faces to Cobb County. And he meant that in many different ways, including the differences that people have in their communities and their localities and what they envision for their specific communities. So, we have a plan for Powers Ferry that is much more detailed and I think oriented to some of the things that you've said. But again, that one does not have anything listed for funding. We have a plan in Vinings, and that is very, very detailed about land use in particular and design guidelines, but again, did not get into an issue of funding. Even to some extent, the Mableton guidelines that we discussed previously on one of the zonings did not make a commitment and did not actually commit the county to funding. So I think the Josh plan as it is it's an aspirational plan. It does have a whole lot of items and recommendations, but they are just recommendations. And I think then whenever DOT, Stormwater, the Board of Commissioners, any group in the county is involved in looking at issues in this area, the Josh plan simply provides them with a list of things to consider as they are evaluating plans. So it doesn't commit the county to funding, but it does provide a guideline to say this is what the community and the citizens are interested in as you're evaluating DOT projects or as you're evaluating parks projects. So it to me, it doesn't need the funding at this stage. It's obviously very, very long term when you start talking about projects going, well beyond 10 years for implementation. So I think that leaves it up in the air. For instance, the next time we go around on a SPLOST plan, 6 years from now when we're in planning, there's a guideline for that area to evaluate what should or should potentially be included. So I understand your concerns on that. I think the issue for project or the area number 3, as it's called, I think that's a very specific issue that we can address. That does need to be addressed, but I see it as aspirational, and that's the community guidelines or the community statements that everybody in the county has to refer to as they are considering projects in the area.
I would say until we got to the recommendation pages, that was probably the case. But the recommendation pages has timelines and responsible parties, which makes them essentially action items. It says recommendation, timeline, responsible party, which gives the feeling like this isn't just going to happen at some point, or we're going to refer to this document when we're doing something in the area. To me, it reads like action items that are supposed to be done. And I just don't think there's any funding to actually go out and do the items. So I'll stop at that. Did you have comments, Judy?
No, I'm just sitting up here thinking that this is how many studies we've done on this particular corridor. And as far as I know, none of them have been implemented.
Right.
And this is more, we're including more land in this one. I do realize that we've included more land. But I'm of the opinion also that, you know, while it's a guideline, at some point, when do we start doing something with one of these plans?
Right. I agree. And, you know, that's really my reason for not supporting this plan is I think it sets a false expectation for the public.
But what separates the expectations in this plan, for instance, from the expectations of the Mableton plan?
Well,
this is the area that we want to apply guidelines and development.
The design guidelines apply when somebody comes in either to redevelop a property and they're building something new, they have to follow the design guidelines, or they're doing a certain amount of construction to the building, they have to upgrade. There are no need for funding from the county because there's really nothing that the county's on the hook to do, other than when somebody comes for something, you know, make sure that the policies are, you know, the guidelines are followed. So and that's why I'm saying I think it would be great to put design guidelines on this, on the commercial corridor there, and yeah, because that could provide that sense of community. You know, like the lighting thing could be done if you do design guidelines, the street lighting, you know, style gets included in those design guidelines. And then there's already a petition process in place if people want to go petition to get street lighting and all of those things through DOT, and then it gets added to the electric bills. So there's some things that are kind of already in place to deal with things, and some of it seemed to be overstepping into, we're going to put some different procedures in place just for this area that are out of the county norm as well. But that's really where I get to is the fact that the recommendations became, you know, 8 pages of action items that are labeled short-term, mid-term, or long-term, and, you know, or immediate even. Some of them are immediate, and, you know, one of the immediates is continue to pursue the acquisition of additional open space for preservation and parkland for recreation where appropriate. Well, the county has no money to immediately. We already spent the parks bond. There's nothing immediate coming with pursuing that, and the staff shouldn't be working on it if we have no money to pursue it. In my view, plus, you know, we need to look at is that an area where, as a global for the county, do we need to pursue more parkland there? Or I saw that 4% of the land in that area is parks. I think that's probably somewhat average to the whole county. I don't know exactly. If you take out, you know, if you look at county-owned parkland, obviously you get to District 1 and you have Kennesaw Mountain in that, which really skews the numbers. But that's kind of just my thinking on it, you know, but, you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion on it.
So what if the word is goals instead of recommendation? I mean, because ultimately that's what the community is wanting to know, is that, for instance, whoever the new incoming district commissioner is, the planning commissioner, that as they are evaluating projects, evaluating items, gives them a reference point for things to consider as they're going forward. As a community group like ECCA is working on something, then they say, hey, let's help these neighborhoods form this group that can activate and implement this recommendation. But I think we have to have a document of some kind that gives people some direction and a sense and course of action on implementing and beginning the implementation. This is not the implementation document. To me, it is the recommendation of things to try.
It seems to me it's almost an implementation document or action items. I think the recommendations could be dramatically changed. They could be changed into goals and that, but that's not something we can do in a motion here today. I think
one way to look at it is like it's really guidelines for staff, and they've been, they've actually used them very successfully in other areas. So I guess if we looked at all the plans have the same format, if we're talking about the studies, they have the same format, I believe.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, it's just a matter of
I'm trying to think back.
Doesn't make any sense. I think it sets a false expectation, and that's what I've found is we've had, various studies come up over time that people are saying, well, we did this study and it had all these recommendations and nothing's been done, and now you're going to do another study and we'll probably come up with pretty much the same recommendations because there's no, so to me, this thing sets a very false expectation, but it's also lots and lots of recommendations. They aren't, broader brush goals, if they were broader brush goals and with, some specific things that the county can implement, like a change to the land use plan or small area policies or design guidelines. Obviously the work to form the design guidelines costs the county some money, but once they're implemented, it's really not a county expense, that goes with it. I see a lot of county expenses with an awful lot of this stuff that just doesn't make sense to me. So,
but again, that goes to the point that the expenses would not be authorized until such time that the community, and it was a very broad-based effort. This was not a gang of 13. I can tell you, based on the number of emails I received referencing this, there was a great deal of input over, because it started and it paused and it worked again, and there were a great deal of number of people involved from the community, along with the community leaders and the staff that worked on this. It is a document that reflects the goals of the community, and I think we should find a way to establish that and put it in place so that when staff is considering something, when we as a planning commission are considering something, it gives us a point of reference on each of these documents as they come forward, or each of the actions. And I think that's what this is. It's a first step that says, okay, we need guidelines for an area. Then the follow-on action is to actually create the policy guidelines for the area, but we need to establish with this document the need and the desire for those things to be in place. And that's what I said. I think this is an interim step. This is not an end-all document.
Yeah, but it reads like an action plan without any ability to actually fulfill it, which is, I go back to I think it's setting very false expectations to the community that this stuff's actually going to happen at some point, and our experience says it's not going to happen. Anyway, I think we've kind of gone back and forth. I think at this point we need to have a motion on this and kind of wrap it up.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Cobb, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I didn't want to be muted again.
Okay. And
so the attorney needs to make a recommendation, I would think.
Yeah. Go ahead and make a motion, Tony, and we'll put it to a vote.
I make a recommendation that we approve the JOS study with the project 3. I forget which page number that was, regarding the lake. We recommend that project be deleted at this time. It is, as we said, just a a document of recommendations. It can obviously be added back in or worked on if someone in the community finds a way to do that. The recommendations will remain recommendations and no funding is obligated at this time. And the community can use the recommendations as guidelines for civic groups to establish and implement as they find feasible.
I would second that. And when you're talking about the lake, you're talking about the portion that the attorney spoke to about where it would be open space. Is that the portion you were talking about?
The PRC.
Yes, that was listed as project number 3, and I was just scanning through John's looking at that page number.
That between Chaliford and Johnson's Ferry, wasn't it?
Yes, along Johnson Ferry Road, project number 3.
I recommend that remain an act. I think it's an act now.
Yes, that's on page 39. That's on page 39 of the Josh plan.
Okay.
Thank you. Then I would second that motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, all against? That would be me. So it carries with the motion for approval, 4-1, me against it.
Cobb, can I say one more thing before you move on? Yeah, I know you all took the vote and everything. I didn't want to interrupt the discussion as you all were debating it back and forth, but I think Tony kind of touched on it during his comments. This study follows the same format that we've used for several other studies that both you and Tony mentioned during your discussion. And for instance, Powers Ferry master plan encompassed a pretty wide area as well. Also didn't include any specific provisions for funding projects, but still resulted in some major changes happening along that corridor, Restaurant Road being one of them, the Brumby Elementary redevelopment, Trail Mill Marketplace being another. That's just an example of what the studies that our group conducts can be used for when utilized appropriately and viewed in a certain context, not so much as detailed, engineered, cost specific plans or documents, but just overall plan and concept exercises.
I think they were being consistent. I think the plans are all consistent as what the recommendation. It would be up to the district board of commissioner to how they're going to finalize this plan, but I think to pass it on to them so that they could do the finalization of it.
Okay, and I just know that my experience has been these plans haven't worked as well as they should, and they've set expectations that don't get realized, and I think maybe the format should change to be more goals and take out action items that probably aren't going to occur, but that's a whole nother discussion. With that, I think we have some minutes to adopt if somebody wants to make a motion.
I make a motion we approve. Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, you got it.
Make a motion that we approve the planning commission meeting for July the 15th and the special call meeting for July the 27th.
Minutes of those. Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing not, all those in favor, raise your hand. Carries 5-0. And with that, I believe that's our entire agenda. So we are adjourned.
All right.